We stand before the Great Sphinx of Giza, a creature of stone with the body of a lion and the gaze of a god. For centuries, we've been told it was carved by Pharaoh Khafre, a monument of the 4th dynasty, built some 4,500 years ago to guard the pyramids of Giza. The story is neat, complete, and comforting. Textbooks describe ramps, copper tools, and workers hauling limestone blocks under the pharaoh's divine command. It's a tale of human ingenuity, of a civilization at its peak. But what if that story is a lie? What if the Sphinx is far older than the pharaohs, older than Egypt itself, a relic of a forgotten time when the world was different, when rain fell on a green Sahara and a civilization we've never named left its mark in stone? Welcome, seekers of the unknown, to Mystery History for Sleep. I'm Mr. H, your guide through the shadows of the past, where truths lie buried beneath sand and silence. Close your eyes and imagine the Giza Plateau, not as the arid desert we know today, but as a lush, vibrant land. Thousands of years ago, before the pyramids rose, before the Nile became the lifeblood of Egypt, this was a place of grasslands, lakes, and monsoon rains. The Sahara was not a wasteland but a cradle of life, where human settlements thrived, where rock art depicted herds of antelope and rivers that have long since vanished. This was the African humid period, a time between 7,000 and 4,000 BCE, when the climate of North Africa supported a world we can scarcely imagine. And it was during this era, some say, that the Sphinx was carved not by the Egyptians, but by a people whose name has been erased by time itself. In the early 1990s, a geologist named Robert Schoch stood before the Sphinx and saw something that changed everything. He wasn't an Egyptologist, trained to recite the accepted timeline of pharaonic construction. He was a scientist of stone, a man who read the Earth's history in its scars. What he saw on the walls of the Sphinx enclosure wasn't the sharp, horizontal wear of wind and sand, the kind that has scoured the nearby pyramids for millennia. Instead, he found deep, vertical channels, wavy patterns, and smoothed corners that told a different story. These were the marks of water-not fleeting desert storms, but sustained heavy rainfall, the kind that flows down rock faces for centuries, carving channels and shaping stone in ways that only a wet climate can. To Schoch, the evidence was unmistakable. The Sphinx had endured a deluge that ended thousands of years before the first pharaoh ever held a scepter. This discovery is a fracture in the foundation of Egyptology. If the Sphinx shows signs of water erosion from a time when Egypt was green, it could mean the monument predates the civilization we credit with its creation. The last time the Giza Plateau saw rainfall like that was over 7,000 years ago, long before the Old Kingdom, before the unification of Egypt under Menes, before the hieroglyphs that tell us who ruled and what they built. If Schoch is right, the Sphinx could be 10,000 years old or more, a silent witness to a chapter of human history we've never written. But this raises a question that echoes through the ages. Who carved this guardian of stone, and why did their story vanish? The traditional narrative insists the Sphinx was built by Khafre, the pharaoh who raised the second pyramid at Giza. His name is tied to the monument through a fragmentary statue found nearby, and the assumption that the Sphinx's face mirrors his own. Yet, there's no inscription, no royal cartouche, no definitive text linking Khafre to the Sphinx. The evidence is circumstantial, a story built on proximity rather than proof. And when you look closer, the cracks in that story widen. The temples beside the Sphinx, built from limestone blocks quarried from its enclosure, show none of the same water erosion. Their surfaces are sharp, angular, untouched by the rains that sculpted the Sphinx's walls. This suggests the temples were built later, using stone cut from the Sphinx's own body, as if the monument was already there when the pharaohs arrived to claim it. Let's linger on that thought. The Sphinx, a colossal figure carved directly from the bedrock, required an engineering feat of staggering scale. Over 1,000 tons of limestone were removed to shape its form, a project that demanded sophisticated planning, tools, and labor. The builders worked with the natural grain of the stone, following its layers with precision that rivals modern construction. Yet, unlike every other monument in Egypt, the Sphinx bears no name, No dedication, no claim of ownership. Pharaohs were not known for humility. Their temples, statues, and tombs were theological statements, declarations of divine power etched in stone to ensure their immortality. To find a monument of this scale, aligned with astronomical precision to the equinox sunrise, without a single hieroglyph praising its creator, it's not just puzzling, it's unthinkable. Now, consider the implications. If the Sphinx predates the pharaohs, it challenges everything we know about the development of human civilization. The accepted timeline places monumental architecture at the dawn of the Old Kingdom, around 3100 BCE. But a sphinx carved 7,000 years ago would belong to a time we call prehistoric, a period when humans were supposedly living in simple settlements, not reshaping landscapes with advanced engineering. This isn't just about dating a single monument, it's about rewriting the story of who we were and what we were capable of. Could there have been a civilization, lost to history, that possessed knowledge we've only begun to rediscover? A civilization that understood geology, astronomy, and engineering in ways that defy our assumptions about the past? This idea isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Across the world, other ancient sites whisper of a forgotten chapter. Take Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a complex of stone pillars erected 12,000 years ago, before the invention of writing, before the rise of agriculture as we know it. Its builders moved stones weighing up to 20 tons, carved intricate reliefs, and aligned their structures with celestial events. Or consider the submerged ruins of Yonaguni off Japan, with their precise angles and terraces, dated to a time when sea levels were lower, perhaps 10,000 years ago. These sites, like the Sphinx, don't fit the neat progression of history we've been taught. They suggest a world where advanced knowledge existed long before we thought it possible, only to be lost in some great catastrophe, a flood, a climate shift, a collapse that buried their achievements beneath sand and sea. And then there's the legend of Atlantis, told by the Greek philosopher Plato over 2,300 years ago. He described a sophisticated civilization that flourished 9,000 years before his time, a society of architects and navigators that vanished in a single day and night of calamity. Could the Sphinx be a remnant of such a culture, a guardian left behind to mark a sacred place? The idea has been dismissed as myth, but myths often carry fragments of truth. The African humid period ended abruptly around 4000 BCE, as the Sahara transformed from a green paradise to a desert wasteland. Human populations migrated to the Nile, where Egypt would later rise. What if the Sphinx was carved before that shift, a monument to a world that was already fading, its builders knowing their time was running out? This brings us to a darker question. Why don't we know their names? Why is the Sphinx silent, its origins shrouded in a fog of forgetting? The ancient Egyptians were obsessive record keepers, mapping their kings, their gods, their victories in hieroglyphs that have survived millennia. Yet the Sphinx, the most enigmatic monument in their land, has no story, no creator, no purpose inscribed upon it. This silence feels deliberate, as if someone or something wanted its truth to remain hidden. The patterns of erosion tell one story, but the absence of words tells another. It's as if the builders chose anonymity over immortality, crafting a monument that would endure not through fame, but through mystery. And here's where the whispers grow louder. Some say the Sphinx guards a secret far greater than its age. The psychic Edgar Cayce, in the early 20th century, spoke of a hall of records buried beneath the Sphinx, a chamber containing the knowledge of a lost civilization, texts, tools, perhaps even technology that could rewrite our understanding of the past. Ground-penetrating radar in the 1980s and 2000s detected anomalies beneath the monument, voids and cavities that suggest artificial structures. Yet, when researchers sought to explore further, they were met with locked gates and official denials. The Egyptian authorities have consistently dismissed these findings as natural fissures or insignificant. But why the secrecy? Why the refusal to investigate what lies beneath the pores of the Sphinx? This is where the sand begins to shift. The story of the Sphinx isn't just about stone and rain. It's about what we're allowed to know, and what has been buried not by time but by design. The water erosion, the lack of inscriptions, the anomalies beneath the plateau, they all point to a truth that threatens the very foundation of history as we know it. The Sphinx doesn't just stand as a monument, it stands as a question, one that has waited thousands of years to be asked. Who built it? Why did they hide its purpose? And what are we not supposed to find? If this mystery already has you questioning everything you've been told, hit subscribe. We're only at the beginning, and the shadows of Giza have far more to reveal. As we drift deeper into the night, let the image of the Sphinx linger in your mind. A creature of stone, half lion, half god, gazing at the horizon where the sun rises each morning. It has watched empires rise and fall, seen the rains turn to dust, and kept its silence through it all. But silence is not emptiness. It's a presence, a weight, a challenge to those who dare to listen. The Sphinx is not just a monument. It's a warning that history is not what we think, that the past holds secrets we've been taught to ignore, and that the truth may be far older, far stranger than we're ready to accept. So, let's keep asking. Let's keep digging, because the story of the Sphinx is only the first step into a labyrinth where memory itself has been buried, waiting for us to find it again. In our last journey, we stood before the Great Sphinx, its water-scarred enclosure, hinting at a time before the pharaohs, a time when rain fell on a green Sahara and an unknown civilization carved a guardian to outlast their world. Tonight, we turn our gaze to the Great Pyramid itself, the towering heart of the Giza Plateau, a monument that speaks not in hieroglyphs, but in numbers so precise, so universal, that they challenge everything we believe about the past. What if the Great Pyramid isn't a tomb, not a temple, but a machine? A machine not of gears or circuits, but of geometry and time, built to preserve knowledge through the collapse of civilizations. Close your eyes, let the desert wind fade, and listen as the stones reveal their secrets. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands over 140 meters tall. Its 2.3 million limestone blocks are testament to a vision we can barely comprehend. Each block, weighing between 5 and 15 tons, was cut, moved, and placed with a precision that defies the tools we attribute to ancient Egypt: copper chisels, wooden sleds, and human sweat. The base is leveled to within 2.1 centimeters across its massive 230-meter span, aligned to true north with an accuracy of 0.05 degrees. Modern engineers, armed with lasers and GPS, struggle to match such feats. Yet we're told this was the work of a 4th dynasty pharaoh, Khufu, around 2580 BCE, a king whose name appears only once in the entire structure, scrawled in red paint on a hidden beam. But the pyramid's true language isn't in its silence or its single cartouche. It's in its measurements, its ratios, its alignments, a code written in stone that speaks of knowledge far beyond what we believe the Egyptians possessed. Let's begin with the numbers. The Great Pyramid's base measures approximately 230.4 meters on each side, forming a near-perfect square. Its original height, before the capstone was lost, was 146.6 meters. Divide the perimeter 921.6 reals meters be the height, and you get 2,857, a number so close to 2 pi that the difference is less than 0.1%. This isn't a rough approximation, the kind you might stumble upon by trial and error. This is deliberate, precise, a mathematical constant encoded in the very shape of the pyramid. Pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, wasn't formally defined until centuries later, yet here it is, etched in limestone on a scale that dwarfs human ambition. But the code goes deeper. The pyramid's slope, about 51.84 degrees, embeds another universal constant, the golden ratio, phi, approximately 1.618. When you compare the half base length to the height, the proportions align with phi, a number revered across cultures for its aesthetic and mathematical harmony. These aren't coincidences. The probability of a single structure encoding both pi and phi by accident is vanishingly small. But the Great Pyramid doesn't stop there. Its dimensions seem to know the Earth itself. Multiply the height, 146.6 meters, by 43,200, and you get 6,356,400 meters, an eerily close match to the Earth's polar radius, within 99.7% accuracy. Multiply the base perimeter, 921, 6 meters, by the same factor, and you get 39,931,200 meters, a figure that approximates the Earth's equatorial circumference with similar precision. Why 43,200? It's not arbitrary. It's tied to the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that completes a cycle every 25,920 years. Divide that cycle by 600, and you get 43,200, a scaling factor that bridges the pyramid's measurements to the planet's dimensions. This suggests a knowledge of astronomy and geometry that should have been impossible for a civilization without telescopes, calculus, or a concept of a spherical Earth. The pyramid's internal structure deepens the mystery. The so-called King's Chamber, a granite box at the heart of the monument, is built with blocks hauled from quarries hundreds of miles away, fitted with precision that modern masons envy. The chamber's acoustic properties are extraordinary. Sounds resonate in ways that suggest intentional design, as if the space was meant to amplify specific frequencies. The air shafts, narrow channels extending from the chamber to the pyramid's exterior, are aligned with celestial precision. The southern shaft points to Orion's belt, the northern to the pole star, not as they appear today, but as they were positioned around 2450 BCE. This isn't simple stargazing. Achieving such alignments requires instruments capable of measuring fractions of degrees, an understanding of stellar motion, and the ability to calculate three-dimensional relationships between Earth and the heavens. No evidence of such tools or knowledge exists in the Egyptian record, yet the pyramid stands as proof that someone, somewhere, possessed it. Who could have known these things? The Egyptians of the 4th dynasty were masters of practical mathematics, geometry for land surveys, arithmetic for commerce. But nothing in their surviving texts suggests they grasped pi, phi, or planetary dimensions. Their astronomy was sophisticated, tied to the Nile's floods and religious rituals, but not to the level of calculating precession or stellar alignments across millennia. The Great Pyramid feels like a singularity, a spike in knowledge that appeared fully formed and was never replicated. Later pyramids, like those of Khafre and Menkaure, lack the same mathematical precision. Their slopes are less refined, their alignments approximate, their construction often compromised. The bent pyramid of Sneferu, built just decades earlier, had to be adjusted mid-construction to avoid collapse. If the Great Pyramid was the culmination of centuries of expertise, why did that expertise vanish so quickly? Why do subsequent monuments show a decline rather than an evolution? This leads us to a bolder hypothesis. What if the Great Pyramid wasn't built by the Egyptians, but inherited by them? What if it was a relic of a lost civilization, one that encoded its understanding of the universe in stone to survive a catastrophe they knew was coming? The idea of a time machine isn't science fiction, he writes, a metaphor for a structure designed to preserve knowledge through the collapse of empires, the loss of languages, the forgetting of entire worlds. Mathematical constants like pi and phi are universal, unchanging regardless of culture or time, unlike hieroglyphs, which require a Rosetta Stone to decipher, or papyrus, which crumbles to dust. Geometry endures. By embedding these ratios in the pyramid's dimensions, its builders created a message that could be understood by any civilization advanced enough to measure it. This concept of knowledge preservation isn't unique to Giza. Across the ancient world, we find echoes of similar intent. Stonehenge in England, built around 2500 BCE, aligns with the solstices, encoding astronomical cycles in its stones. The massive trilithons of Baalbek in Lebanon, some weighing over 800 tons, suggest engineering capabilities that defy explanation. The submerged structures of Yonaguni, possibly 10,000 years old, hint at a culture that vanished beneath rising seas. These sites, like the Great Pyramid, seem designed to outlast their creators, to speak across millennia not through words, but through scale and precision. The Great Pyramid, with its mathematical codes, could be a time capsule, a repository of truths meant for a future that had forgotten how to calculate them. But why hide such knowledge in plain sight? Why build a monument so massive, so enduring, yet leave no name, no inscription, no claim to glory? Egyptian pharaohs were not shy about their achievements. Their tombs, temples, and statues are covered with cartouches, hymns, and scenes of divine favor. The Great Pyramid, by contrast, is silent, its only marking a faint cartouche of Khufu's name, found in an inaccessible chamber above the king's chamber, feels like an afterthought, a whisper rather than a shout. Some even question its authenticity, noting that the explorer Howard Vyse, who discovered it in 1837, was under pressure to link the pyramid to a pharaoh. But even if genuine, a single name doesn't explain the absence of everything else. See no prayers, no maps of the afterlife, no rituals carved into the stone. This silence suggests a purpose beyond Egyptian religion, beyond the needs of a single king. Here's where the shadows deepen. Some researchers propose that the Great Pyramid was never a tomb at all. No mummy, no grave goods, no sarcophagus lid, just an empty granite box in the king's chamber, too plain to be a pharaoh's coffin. The chamber's design, with its precise proportions and acoustic resonance, hints at a function we don't understand. Could it be a chamber for preserving frequencies, for aligning with cosmic forces, for anchoring something intangible yet essential? The air shafts, too narrow for human passage, point to stars with a precision that suggests more than symbolic intent. Perhaps the pyramid was a tool, a device built to interact with the universe in ways we're only beginning to explore, through resonance, through alignment, through the mathematics that govern reality itself. And then there's the whisper of something stranger. In the 1960s, Swiss author Erich von Däniken suggested that ancient monuments like the Great Pyramid could be the work of extraterrestrial visitors, beings who shared advanced knowledge with early humans. The idea sounds outlandish, but consider the anomalies. A structure aligned to true north with near-perfect accuracy, dimensions that encode Earth's measurements, and a level of engineering that strains the limits of copper tools and human labor. Could the pyramid be a beacon, a marker left by a civilization not of this world, or one that worked with knowledge we've lost? The absence of inscriptions might support this. Why write in a language when your message is meant for those who speak the universal tongue of mathematics? This brings us to a chilling possibility. What if the Great Pyramid was built to survive a catastrophe, not just a flood or a drought, but a collapse of civilization itself? The precession cycle, encoded in its scaling factor, suggests a timescale that stretches beyond human memory. The pyramid's resilience surviving earthquakes, invasions, and 4,500 years of time implies a design meant for geological epochs, not just dynasties. Its silence, its lack of cultural markers, makes it universal, a message not for the Egyptians, not for their gods, but for whoever comes next. A civilization recovering from ruin, rediscovering the stars, would find in the pyramid's ratios a curriculum of sorts, a lesson in pi, phi, and the Earth's place in the cosmos. As we linger in this thought, the pyramid becomes more than stone. It becomes a question, a challenge, a warning. It asks us not what we know, but what we're willing to admit we don't. The mathematical codes are there, undeniable, carved in measurements that have outlasted empires. They speak of a people who knew the Earth's shape, the sky's rhythm, the constants that bind the universe. Were they the Egyptians, borrowing knowledge from a forgotten source? Were they a lost civilization, erased by time or design? Or were they something else entirely, leaving a legacy we're not yet ready to claim? If these questions stir your curiosity, hit subscribe, because the pyramid's secrets are far from exhausted, and the night is still young. The Great Pyramid stands, not as a tomb for a king, but as a time machine for knowledge, a structure that holds truths too vast to be spoken, too enduring to be forgotten. Its ratios are a language that needs no translation, its alignments a map that needs no key. As you drift towards sleep, imagine standing in the king's chamber, surrounded by granite that hums with secrets. The silence is dense, The air heavy, the stones waiting. They don't tell you who built them. They don't tell you why. They only ask that you measure, that you question, that you listen to the numbers that have been true since the stars began to burn. And in that silence, you might hear the echo of a world we've forgotten, a world that built a machine to ensure we'd remember it again. We step inside the heart of the Great Pyramid itself, into chambers of granite and limestone that hold no body, no treasure, no story-only silence. We've been told it's the tomb of Khufu, a monument to a king's eternal glory. But what if it's not a tomb at all? What if this towering enigma, built with impossible precision, was never meant to cradle a pharaoh's remains, but to serve a purpose we can't yet fathom? Lie back, let the darkness of the desert enfold you, and listen as we unravel the mystery of what the Great Pyramid might truly be. Inside, the structure is a labyrinth of passages and chambers, each more enigmatic than the last. The descending passage burrows into the bedrock, leading to an unfinished subterranean chamber. The ascending passage climbs to the grand gallery, a soaring corridor of polished stone, and beyond it lies the king's chamber, a granite heart containing a single, empty stone box. This, we're told, is the sarcophagus of Khufu, the pharaoh who built this wonder around 2580 BCE. But the deeper you look, the less it feels like a tomband, the more it feels like something else entirely. In ancient Egypt, death was not an end but a journey, meticulously planned and lavishly documented. Tombs were not mere graves. They were gateways to eternity, adorned with hieroglyphs, spells, and scenes of the afterlife. The Book of the Dead, the pyramid texts, and countless inscriptions guided the soul through the underworld, naming gods, mapping challenges, and ensuring immortality. Pharaohs filled their resting places with treasures, canopic jars, shabti figurines, and offerings of food and wine. Even minor nobles had tombs painted with vibrant murals of daily life, farming, music, feasts meant to continue forever. The Valley of the Kings is a library of such stories, its walls shouting the names and deeds of the dead. But the Great Pyramid? It's silent. No hieroglyphs grace its chambers. No paintings depict the gods. No spells point the way to the afterlife. Just stone, angles, and a void where a king's legacy should be. The king's chamber, at the pyramid's core, is a marvel of construction. Its walls, made of massive granite blocks hauled from Aswan, 800 kilometers away, are fitted so tightly that a razor blade can't slip between them. The ceiling, a series of granite beams, distributes the weight of millions of tons above, stable for over 4,500 years. Inside sits a rectangular granite box, often called a sarcophagus, but it's unlike any other in Egypt. It has no lid, no carvings, no traces of mummification oils or resins. It's too small to hold the nested coffins typical of royal burials, too plain for a pharaoh's grandeur. No body was ever found, no grave goods, no fragments of ritual objects. Compare this to the tomb of Tutankhamun, overflowing with gold, chariots and sacred texts, or even the modest burials of lesser nobles, packed with personal relics. The Great Pyramid, supposedly the greatest tomb of all, offers nothing but emptiness. Some argue it was looted in antiquity, its treasures stolen, its inscriptions erased. But this theory crumbles under scrutiny. The passages show no signs of forced entry, no chisel marks, no broken seals, no scattered debris from hurried theft. Tomb robbers in ancient Egypt were not subtle. They left behind shattered pottery, broken furniture, and soot from torches. Here, there's nothing, no residue, no fragments, not even dust to suggest a burial was disturbed. The box itself, cold and unadorned, shows no wear from a lid being pried off or a body being removed. To believe it was looted, you'd have to imagine thieves so meticulous they erased every trace, leaving the chamber as pristine as the day it was sealed. That's not robbery, that's erasure, and it feels far too deliberate. Others suggest the pyramid was an early prototype, built before the tradition of decorating tombs took hold. But this idea falters against the evidence of its sophistication. The Great Pyramid is no primitive experiment. Its geometry is flawless. its alignment to true north unmatched, its internal design a masterpiece of engineering. The Grand Gallery, with its corbelled ceiling, is a structural marvel, distributing weight with a precision that later pyramids couldn't replicate. The air shafts, extending from the king's chamber, align with stars like Orion's belt, suggesting a purpose tied to the cosmos. Later pyramids, like those of Khafre or Menkaure, are smaller, less precise, sometimes structurally flawed. The bent pyramid of Sneferu, built earlier, nearly collapsed until its angle was adjusted mid-construction. If anything, the Great Pyramid is the peak, not the beginning, of an art form that was never equaled again. So, if it's not a tomb, what is it? The absence of burial evidence invites us to rethink its purpose. The king's chamber, with its strange acoustic properties, offers a clue. Sounds inside whispers, chants resonate in ways that feel engineered, as if the space was designed to amplify specific frequencies. Researchers have measured the chamber's dimensions and found they correspond to harmonic ratios, creating echoes that linger unnaturally. Some propose it was a resonance chamber, built to harness sound or energy for a ritual or scientific purpose we don't understand. The granite, denser than the surrounding limestone, enhances this effect, vibrating in response to certain tones. Could the pyramid have been a tool for interacting with forces beyond the physical, vibrational, cosmic, or even spiritual? The structure's astronomical alignments deepen the mystery. The air shafts, too narrow for ventilation, point to specific stars Orion's belt in the south. The pole star in the north as they appeared around 2450 BCE. This precision suggests an advanced understanding of celestial mechanics, far beyond the practical astronomy of the Egyptians, who tracked the Nile's floods but left no record of such calculations. The pyramid's orientation to true north, within a fraction of a degree, requires knowledge of Earth's axis and magnetic field, concepts not documented in ancient texts. Some researchers speculate it was an observatory, a monument designed to map the heavens, perhaps to align human activity with cosmic cycles. But why build it on such a massive scale, with such enduring materials, if it was only for observation? A bolder idea emerges. What if the Great Pyramid was a machine not of metal or wires, but of stone and intention? Some theorists, inspired by figures like Nikola Tesla, suggest it was designed to generate or channel energy, perhaps electromagnetic or acoustic, using principles we're only beginning to rediscover. The granite in the king's chamber, rich in quartz, could act as a conductor or resonator, amplifying natural energies. The pyramid's shape, with its precise angles, might focus these forces, creating a field effect we can't yet measure. Experiments in the 20th century found that small-scale pyramid models could preserve organic matter or sharpen blades, hinting at properties tied to their geometry. While these claims are debated, they fuel speculation that the Great Pyramid was a technology, its purpose lost when its builders vanished. Then there's the shadow of a stranger possibility. The pyramid's scale, precision, and silence have led some to wonder if it was built with help from beyond Earth. Erich von Däniken, in his controversial book Chariots of the Gods, proposed that extraterrestrial beings might have guided ancient architects, sharing knowledge of mathematics and engineering. The Great Pyramids anomalize its alignment, its weight distribution, its lack of cultural markers fit this narrative. Why else would a civilization build something so vast yet leave no name, no story? Could it be a beacon, a signal to the stars, or a gift from visitors who knew their time on Earth was fleeting? This idea stretches belief, but the pyramid's very existence stretches what we think is possible. More grounded, yet no less profound, is the theory that the pyramid was a repository not of bodies or treasure, but of knowledge. Its silence, its lack of inscriptions, might be intentional, designed to speak to any civilization, in any era, through the universal language of geometry. Unlike papyrus or hieroglyphs, which decay or become unreadable, stone endures. The pyramid's proportions, encoding pi and phi, are a message that transcends language, culture, or time. It could be a safeguard against catastrophe, a flood, a collapse, a forgetting that wipes away all else. By building something that could survive millennia, its creators ensured that future generations would find not a king's name, but a blueprint of the cosmos, a reminder of what was known and lost. This brings us to the heart of the enigma. The Great Pyramid doesn't behave like a tomb. It doesn't serve the rituals of Egyptian religion. It doesn't glorify a pharaoh or his gods. It stands apart, a structure that feels alien to the culture that claims it. Its only inscription, Khufu's faint cartouche, is a whisper in a monument that roars with presence. If it was built for a king, why is it so empty? If it was built for the gods, why is it so silent? If it was built for us, what are we supposed to learn? The pyramid doesn't answer. It only watches, its stones holding secrets that refuse to yield. If this mystery has you questioning the stories we've been told, hit subscribe, for the sands of Giza hold more shadows to explore. As you drift towards sleep, picture yourself in the king's chamber, surrounded by granite that hums with ancient intent. The air is heavy, the silence alive, the stones pressing down with the weight of questions unasked. The Great Pyramid is not a tomb, not a temple, but a presensor machine, a map, a memory. It was built to outlast the world that made it, to speak to those who come after, not in words, but in the language of angles and echoes. Whoever built it, whatever they meant, they left us a challenge, to look beyond the stories, to listen to the silence, and to wonder what truth lies in the space where a king should be, but isn't. We uncover a relic that challenges the very heart of the story we've been told, a single slab of limestone, buried in sand, that speaks not of creation, but of restoration. The inventory Stela, found in the shadow of the Sphinx, tells us that Khufu, the pharaoh credited with the Great Pyramid, didn't build the monuments of Giza. He found them, ancient and sacred, and sought only to preserve their power. Close your eyes, let the desert's breath carry you, and listen as a forgotten stone rewrites history. It was 1858 when a French archaeologist, Auguste Mariette, knelt in the sand at the base of the Sphinx. He wasn't chasing grand discoveries that day, only clearing debris as part of a routine survey of the Giza plateau. His workers, digging through centuries of accumulated sand, unearthed a broken, weathered piece of limestone, unremarkable at first glance. No gold adorned it, no jewels gleamed, no royal flourishes caught the eye. It was just a slab, covered in hieroglyphs that demanded careful translation to reveal their meaning. But when the text was decoded, it sent a tremor through the world of Egyptology, tremor that has been quietly suppressed ever since. The inventory Stela, as it's now called, didn't sing the praises of a pharaoh's conquests or divine mandate. It told a humbler, stranger story. Khufu, the great king of the 4th dynasty, didn't carve the Sphinx or raise the pyramids. He found them, already ancient, and dedicated himself to their care. The Stela's text is unlike the boastful inscriptions typical of Egyptian monuments. Pharaohs were masters of propaganda, etching their names and deeds into every surface to ensure immortality. Temples bore their cartouches, statues proclaimed their divine lineage, and tombs mapped their journey to the gods. But the inventory Stela speaks in a different, tone reverent, almost deferential. It describes how Khufu, ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt, came upon the Sphinx buried in sand, its form weathered but its presence commanding. He didn't claim to have built it. Instead, he organized its restoration, clearing the dunes that choked its body and building temples nearby to honor its guardian power. The Stela mentions Isis, goddess of magic, as mistress of the pyramid, and references a temple beside the Sphinx, now lost to time. Most strikingly, it lists shrines and offerings Khufu established, not as a creator, but as a caretaker of something far older than his reign. This is no small detail. In ancient Egypt, monuments were more than stone. They were theological statements, proof of a pharaoh's divine right to rule. Every structure had a patron, a purpose, a connection to the cosmic order that justified the king's power. To find a monument like the Sphinx, aligned with the equinox sunrise and revered as sacred, without a clear royal claim is not just unusual, it's unthinkable. The Stela suggests that even Khufu's priests, the architects of his divine mythology, believed the Sphinx belonged to a time before their king, a sacred landscape that demanded respect rather than ownership. If Khufu, the supposed master of Giza, saw himself as a restorer rather than a builder, what does that say about the monuments we attribute to him? Could the entire Giza complex pyramid, Sphinx, and temples predate the pharaohs, inherited by a civilization that claimed them as its own? The implications are staggering. If the Sphinx was already ancient when Khufu arrived, the Great Pyramid, aligned perfectly with its gaze, might also be older. The traditional timeline places the pyramid's construction around 2580 BCE, a pinnacle of Old Kingdom engineering. But the Stela hints at a different story, one where Egypt's greatest monuments were not born of Khufu's ambition but discovered by him, relics of a forgotten era. This challenges the very foundation of Egyptology, which rests on the assumption that Giza's wonders emerged from the 4th dynasty's genius. If they were inherited, built by a civilization lost to history, then Egypt itself becomes a layer atop something older, something deliberately obscured. But here's where the sand grows heavy with silence. The inventory Stela, despite its explosive implications, was quickly sidelined. After its discovery, it was moved to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it sits in obscurity, rarely displayed, and never featured in major exhibitions. Egyptologists dismissed it as late-period propaganda, a text from the 26th dynasty, some 2,000 years after Khufu's time, written by priests with questionable motives. They argued it was historical fiction, a fabrication to serve political ends we can't fully discern. Textbooks barely mention it, and when they do, it's as a curiosity, not a serious document. This dismissal is so thorough, so unified, that it feels less like scholarship and more like a coordinated effort to bury an inconvenient truth. Let's pause and consider this. Why would priests, over a millennium after Khufu, invent a story that diminishes his legacy? Egyptian tradition was obsessed with glorifying pharaohs, especially foundational figures like Khufu, whose name was synonymous with the greatest monument on earth. Retroactive mythmaking was common, but it always served to elevate rulers, linking them to past greatness, not reducing them to caretakers. The inventory, Stela, does the opposite. It portrays Khufu as a servant of older gods, a restorer of sacred sites he didn't create. If this was propaganda, it's the most counterproductive in history, undermining the divine authority of a legendary king. It raises more questions than it answers, casting doubt on the very narrative it should reinforce. Why would anyone craft such a story, unless it held a kernel of truth, a truth too uncomfortable to embrace? The dismissal of the Stela creates its own contradictions. Egyptologists rely on other late-period texts when they support the established timeline, yet the inventory Stela is labeled unreliable because it doesn't quote. This double standard smells of intellectual gatekeeping, a way to protect the accepted chronology while stifling inquiry. The Stela's message that the Sphinx and perhaps the pyramids were already there when Khufu arrived threatens to unravel the neat progression of Egyptian history. It suggests that the pharaohs were not the originators of Giza's wonders but inheritors, custodians of a legacy they couldn't fully claim. And if that's true, who were the true builders? What knowledge did they possess? And why was it buried beneath the weight of a new civilization's story? This question echoes beyond Egypt. In ancient Sumer, texts like the Enuma Elish describe ziggurats and sacred sites tied to gods older than human memory, structures that kings restored rather than built. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh speaks of a city, Uruk, with walls built by the gods before its kings took power. Could the inventory Stela be part of a broader pattern, where ancient civilizations claimed older monuments as their own, weaving them into new myths to legitimize their rule? The Stela's reference to Isis as mistress of the pyramid is particularly haunting. Isis, a goddess of creation and magic, was rarely linked to specific monuments. Her presence in the text suggests the pyramid held a significance beyond Khufu's reign, tied to forces or knowledge that predated his dynasty. And then there's the matter of what's missing. The stela is broken, its edges worn, but the text that remains is curiously selective. It details Khufu's restoration, his temples, his offerings, but says nothing about who built the Sphinx or when. This absence feels intentional, as if the stone was meant to preserve just enough to honor the monument's sanctity without revealing its origins. Some speculate that earlier inscriptions, now lost, might have named the true Bildersa civilization erased from history, perhaps by time, perhaps by design. The stela's survival, tucked away in a museum, feels like a whisper that slipped through the cracks, a voice that wasn't supposed to speak. As we sink deeper into this mystery, the inventory stela becomes more than a relic. It's a challenge to everything we've been taught about Giza. It tells us that Khufu, the great builder, may have been a pilgrim, kneeling before monuments he couldn't claim. It tells us that the Sphinx, and perhaps the pyramid, were part of a sacred landscape older than Egypt itself. And it tells us that someone, somewhere, wanted that truth to fade, locked away in a museum dismissed as myth. As you drift towards sleep, imagine Khufu standing before the Sphinx, its stone face gazing past him to a horizon he couldn't comprehend. The inventory stela is a whisper from that momenta whisper that says, the past is not what we think, and the truth is buried deeper than we dare to dig. Tonight, we journey to a moment over 1,000 years later, when a prince, never meant to be king, lay down in the shadow of the Sphinx and heard its voice in a dream. The dream stela of Thutmose IV tells a tale of divine promises and buried gods. But more than that, it reveals a truth that shakes the foundations of Egypt's history. The Sphinx was forgotten, even by the civilization that claimed it. Lie back, let the desert's quiet embrace you, and listen as a stone speaks of secrets lost to time. It's around 1401 BCE, in the 18th dynasty of Egypt, a time of power and prosperity. The Giza Plateau, home to the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx, should be the heart of sacred reverence, a testament to the pharaoh's divine legacy. But something is wrong. The Sphinx, that colossal guardian of stone, is disappearing. Sand has swallowed its body, leaving only its head and chest above the dunes. No priests tend its presence, no festivals honor its gaze, no inscriptions mark its purpose. This is not the icon we know today, celebrated as the Sentinel of Giza. It's a neglected relic, ignored by the very culture that supposedly carved it under Khafre just 800 years earlier. How could a monument so vast, so central to Egypt's sacred landscape, be abandoned to the desert's embrace? This question sets the stage for a story that feels more like myth than history, yet is carved in red granite between the Sphinx's paws. Prince Thutmose, a younger son of Pharaoh Amenhotep II, was not destined for the throne. His older brothers stood ahead of him, their divine bloodline securing their place in Egypt's cosmic order. But one day, during a hunting expedition on the Giza Plateau, Thutmose rested in the shade of the Sphinx's buried form. Exhausted, he fell asleep between its paws, where the sand had piled high, hiding the lion's body from the world. What happened next is etched into the dream stela, a monument still standing today, its words a testament to a moment that changed a prince's fate. In his sleep, the Sphinx spoke, identifying itself as Horemarket, the horizon god, guardian of the dawn. Its voice was not triumphant but plaintive, heavy with centuries of neglect. It complained of sand filling its throat, choking its spirit, of being forgotten by the people who once revered it. The Sphinx had watched the sun rise alone, day after day, with no offerings, no priests, no acknowledgement of its sacred vigil. The god offered Thutmose a bargain, simple yet profound. If the prince would clear the sand from its body, restore the temples that had crumbled, and revive the rituals that had faded, the throne of Egypt would be his not as a prize for ambition, but as a duty born of service. Thutmose accepted. He rallied workers, cleared tons of sand, and revealed the Sphinx's full form for the first time in generations. He offered gold, incense, and prayers, establishing a new priesthood to maintain its worship. Within months, through a series of events no records fully explain, Thutmose became Pharaoh Thutmose IV, ruler of a kingdom he was never meant to lead. The dream Stela, erected to commemorate this moment, stands as a testament to his divine encounter, a story of a forgotten god reclaiming its place through a prince's devotion. But this tale is more than royal propaganda. It's a fracture in Egypt's timeline, a crack that reveals how deeply the Sphinx had been erased from memory. If it was carved by Khafre, as we're told, only 800 years separate his reign from Thutmose's. Egypt was a civilization obsessed with continuity, recording its kings, mapping its tombs, preserving its gods in stone and papyrus. The 18th dynasty had records of rulers from over 1,000 years past, their names and deeds meticulously preserved. Yet the Sphinx, a monument beside the Great Pyramid, had no active cult, no priesthood, no place in the religious calendar. It had become invisible, buried not just in sand but in the collective forgetting of a culture that should have cherished it. How could something so monumental, so tied to Egypt's divine order, slip through the cracks of memory? The dream Stela's language adds to the mystery. It's not a triumphant declaration of a pharaoh's glory, as most inscriptions are. It's intimate, almost personal, describing the Sphinx's sufferings and, in its throat, its voice muffled, its purpose unfulfilled. The god speaks of loneliness, of centuries spent watching the horizon without acknowledgement. This is not the tone of formulaic propaganda, designed to inflate a ruler's ego. It feels like a genuine encounter, a moment when a prince stumbled upon something ancient and abandoned, something that demanded to be remembered. The Stela details the excavation process, the quality of the sand, the difficulty of clearing it, the condition of the stone after centuries of burial. These specifics, mundane yet vivid, are unusual for royal inscriptions, which typically focus on divine favor, not logistical challenges. They suggest a truth too real to be entirely invented. And yet, there's a shadow over the Stela itself. Its upper third, where the builder of the Sphinx might have been named, is missing. The break is clean, not worn by time but severed, possibly in antiquity, as if someone wanted to erase a critical piece of the story. What remains supports Thutmose's claim to the Thronia divine bargain, a successful excavation, a political miracle. But the absence of the builder's identity feels calculated, ensuring the narrative serves the present without challenging the past. Egyptologists dismiss the Stela as propaganda, a myth to justify an unexpected succession. But this explanation falters. For the story to work as propaganda, the Sphinx must already have been forgotten, its significance lost to the very people who supposedly built it. Why would Thutmose stake his legitimacy on a monument no one remembered, unless it held a power older than his dynasty? This brings us to a deeper question. If the Sphinx was forgotten by the 18th dynasty, what does that say about its origins? In Mesopotamia, texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh describe ancient cities and structures attributed to gods or heroes from a distant past, their builders shrouded in myth. Could the Sphinx belong to a similar tradition, a relic from a time before Egypt's kings, revered yet unclaimed? The Stela's reference to Hora-Makhet, the horizon god, ties the Sphinx to the sun's cycle, a universal symbol that predates Egyptian religion. Perhaps it was a sacred site long before the pharaohs, its purpose so profound that even they could only honor, not create it. The dream Stela's silence about the Sphinx's builder mirrors the silence of the monument itself. No inscriptions mark its body, no cartouches claim its creation. This absence, like the pyramids, feels deliberate, as if the builders chose anonymity over glory. But why? Were they protecting a secret, a knowledge too sacred or dangerous to be recorded? Or did they belong to a civilization so distant that their names were already lost when Egypt rose? The Stela suggests the latter, that the Sphinx was a mystery even to Thutmose, a god that spoke from a time before time, demanding remembrance from a prince who stumbled into its presence. As we drift deeper into this enigma, the dream Stela becomes a mirror reflecting our own questions. It tells us that the Sphinx, now an icon, was once forgotten, buried by sand and neglect. It tells us that a prince heard its voice, not in triumph, but in desperation. a plea to be freed from oblivion. And it tells us that Egypt, for all its records and rituals, could lose track of its greatest monument. As you sink towards sleep, imagine lying between the Sphinx's paws, the sand warm beneath you, its stone face gazing at a horizon older than memory. The dream Stela is not just a story of a king, it's a cry from a god that was lost, and a question that lingers. What else have we forgotten, and who made sure we did? We descend beneath the Giza plateau, into a world of hidden chambers and forgotten passages, where the earth itself guards secrets older than the monuments above. What lies below the pyramids and the Sphinx? A network of tunnels, voids, and rooms that hint at a purpose far beyond Thutmose purpose that someone, somewhere, has worked to keep hidden. Lie back, let the desert's silence envelop you, and follow me into the shadows beneath Giza. The Giza Plateau is more than a collection of stone giants standing under the sun. Beneath its surface lies a labyrinth, a subterranean realm that defies everything we've been taught about ancient Egypt. For over a century, explorers have reported strange discoveries below the pyramids, and the Sphinx cavities too regular to be natural, passages too precise to be mere tomb shafts, chambers that seem to belong to a design we can't yet name. These findings, documented in dusty journals and half-forgotten maps, paint a picture of a plateau that is hollow, a network of spaces carved with intent, hidden from the world above. Yet, whenever these discoveries surface, they vanish just as quickly, sealed off, dismissed, or denied. The question isn't just what lies beneath Giza, it's why we're not allowed to know. One of the most documented of these underground features is the Osiris Shaft, located near the causeway of Khafre's pyramid. This vertical tunnel plunges over 30 meters into the limestone bedrock, a descent that feels more like a journey to another world than a simple tomb. The shaft is divided into 3 levels, each more mysterious than the last. The upper chamber is small, accessible only by a narrow passage that demands specialized equipment to navigate. The second level is flooded with groundwater, a murky barrier that has thwarted thorough exploration but preserved whatever lies below. The third level, deepest of all, opens into a large room with 6 side niches, carved with a precision that rivals the stonework of the pyramids above. At its center sits a stone box, often called a sarcophagus, but it tells a different story. There are no stains of decomposition, no traces of mummification, no signs it ever held a body. The chamber's walls, smooth and unadorned, bear tool marks so consistent they suggest a single, skilled team at work. The acoustics are uncanny whispers carry clearly, while louder sounds seem muffled, as if the space was designed to shape sound itself. This is no ordinary tomb. Egyptian burials, even for minor nobles, were filled with inscriptions, offerings, and relics to guide the soul. The Osiris Shaft has none of these, just silence, precision, and a purpose we can't name. Some call it a symbolic tomb for Osiris, the god of the underworld, tied to later dynasties. But its depth, its craftsmanship, and its emptiness feel older, stranger, as if it belongs to a time before Egypt's gods were born. The shaft is closed to the public, rarely studied, and barely mentioned in official records. Why? If it's just an empty chamber, why the secrecy? The answer lies not in what it contains, but in what it suggests about the plateau's hidden depths. The Osiris Shaft is only one piece of a larger puzzle. In the 19th century, early explorers like Ernest Alfred Wallace Budge described subterranean chambers beneath Giza, extending far beyond what a tomb would require. Budge, a British Egyptologist, wrote of passages and cavities that felt too deliberate to be natural, too extensive to serve a single burial. During Napoleon's expedition in 1798, scholars mapped a network of underground space corridors, stairways, and rooms that connected the pyramids and the Sphinx in ways that hinted at a coordinated design. These maps, drawn before modern tourism altered the site, show features that no longer appear on official plans. Some passages were filled with rubble, as if deliberately sealed. Others were clean, as if maintained long after their creation. These reports, detailed and precise, were dismissed as exaggerations by colonial adventurers, who didn't understand what they saw. But the maps still exist, tucked away in archives, whispering of a Giza we're not meant to explore. In 1926, Herbert Eustace Winlock, an American archaeologist, wrote of catacombs beneath the plateau chambers with carved walls, stairways descending deeper than any tomb required, and passages that followed geometric patterns rather than the irregular sprawl of natural caves. These descriptions suggest something more than burial sites, an infrastructure, a foundation for a purpose we can't yet grasp. Yet, no museum displays models of these spaces. No textbooks teach their existence. The academic world labels them as fissures, unfinished shafts, or errors of early explorers. But the consistency of these accounts across decades, across cultures, makes dismissal feel less like science and more like suppression. The most compelling evidence came in 2008, when Egyptian researchers used ground-penetrating radar to map the subsurface of the Giza plateau. Their scans revealed a network of voids, tunnels, and chambers stretching beneath the pyramids and the Sphinx. Some matched the old maps of Napoleon's team, confirming that early explorers had seen real structures, not illusions. Others were entirely new, large, geometric cavities that couldn't be explained by natural erosion. Beneath the Sphinx, they found spaces with regular shapes, suggesting artificial construction. Beneath the Great Pyramid, they detected chambers, unconnected to known passages, hinting at a separate, older phase of building. Photographs from these surveys, though rare, show cut stone, crude steps, and archways in the darkness, features that don't match the rough-hewn shafts of Egyptian tombs or the polished masonry of the pyramids above. These discoveries pointed to a complex underground network, one that predates or exists apart from the monuments we see. And then, the doors closed. The Egyptian authorities, through the Supreme Council of Antiquities, declared, "There is nothing there." No explanation for the photographs, no acknowledgement of the radar data, no reference to the historical maps. Access was revoked, the findings buried in bureaucratic silence. Journalists who pressed for answers were met with blank denials. Tunnels documented, measured, and even entered were sealed again. This isn't an isolated incident. In the 1930s, an excavation beneath the Sphinx reportedly uncovered a chamber between its pores, described by workers as artificially constructed. It was quickly backfilled, and no official report was published. Later radar scans confirmed a hollow space in the same location, yet independent researchers were barred from investigating. The official stance remains unwavering. Nothing lies beneath Giza that matters, but when evidence is photographed, mapped, and then declared irrelevant, that's not archaeology, it's erasure. This pattern of concealment raises a haunting question. What lies beneath Giza that's so threatening it must be hidden? The underground network suggests a purpose beyond tombs, perhaps a foundation for the entire plateau, built before the pyramids rose. The Osiris shaft's acoustics, the geometric precision of the mapped voids, and the clean cuts of buried passages point to an infrastructure-y engineered system designed for a function we don't understand. Some speculate it was a ritual space, meant to amplify sound or energy, like the resonance chambers in ancient sites like Malta's Hypogeum, where sound frequencies induce trance-like states. Others propose it was a storage system, not for treasure but for knowledge, like the mythical Hall of Records described by Edgar Cayce, said to hold the secrets of a lost civilization. The most unsettling possibility is that these chambers predate the pharaohs entirely. If the Sphinx, with its water erosion, hails from a time 7,000 years ago, could this network belong to the same builders? A civilization that reshaped the bedrock, carving spaces to endure a catastrophe they foresaw? The construction technique, smooth walls, precise angles don't always match Egyptian methods. Some tool marks suggest tools or methods unknown to the Old Kingdom, hinting at a technology lost to history. The flooded second level of the Osiris shaft, preserved by water, might hold clues untouched by time, yet it remains off-limits, its secrets drowned in silence. This brings us to a darker truth. The suppression of these discoveries feels deliberate, as if the underground network threatens the narrative of Egyptian history. If Giza was built on an older foundation, if its chambers were carved by a people before the pharaohs, it upends the timeline of human civilization. It suggests the Egyptians were not the originators of their greatest wonders, but inheritors, claiming a legacy they couldn't replicate. The authorities' refusal to explore further, their quick dismissal of evidence, mirrors a pattern seen elsewhere: texts lost in fires, inscriptions destroyed in quakes, discoveries silenced by institutional power. Why? What could be so dangerous about a few tunnels and chambers? Perhaps it's not the spaces themselves, but what they represent. A chapter of history we're not ready to read, a civilization we're not supposed to remember. As you sink towards sleep, picture yourself descending the Osiris shaft, the stone cool under your touch, the air thick with the weight of ages. The chambers below Giza are not just voids, they're questions, carved in bedrock, waiting for answers. They speak of a time before kings, before gods, when the plateau was shaped for a purpose we can only guess. The network beneath the pyramids is a map of the forgotten, a labyrinth where memory itself lies buried, waiting for someone brave enough to follow its paths. In 1993, a small wheeled robot named Upuotu, meaning opener of the ways after an ancient Egyptian god, made history. Built by German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink, it was sent into the Great Pyramid to inspect its narrow air shafts, passages too small for humans to enter. These shafts, extending from the Queen's chamber, were long thought to be symbolic, perhaps aligned with stars, or meant for the pharaoh's soul to ascend. They slope upward at steep angles, barely 20 centimeters wide, their walls polished to a smoothness that defies ancient tools. Gantenbrink's mission was practical: to improve ventilation and map the shafts, but what Upuotu found was anything but routine. As it climbed the southern shaft, over 60 meters long, its camera beamed back images that stunned the world. A stone door, perfectly fitted, with 2 copper pins protruding like silent sentinels. This was no collapse, no rough end to a passage, but a deliberate barrier, sealed for millennia, hiding something the pyramid's builders didn't want found. The footage was mesmerizing. The shaft's walls, untouched by time, gleamed with precision, their limestone blocks joined so tightly no mortar was needed. The angles never wavered, the surfaces showed no tool marks, as if carved by a method we can't explain. Then, at the end, the door appeared, a smooth, rectangular slab, its copper pins glinting under the robot's light. These pins weren't hinges or handles. They were too small, too awkwardly placed for any mechanical purpose. Were they symbolic, markers of a sacred boundary, or something else entirely? The discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Here was proof of hidden spaces within the pyramid, spaces sealed since its creation, challenging the idea that every chamber had been mapped. The world watched, breathless, as headlines proclaimed a new era of exploration. Could this door lead to a lost chamber, a repository of ancient knowledge, or something even stranger? But the excitement was short-lived. Gantenbrink's contract was abruptly terminated by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. His access to the pyramid was revoked, his research halted without explanation. The official reason was that he had exceeded his mandate, which was limited to ventilation, not exploration. Yet, the door was found during legitimate shaft inspection, and stopping the investigation at the moment of breakthrough felt like more than bureaucracy, it felt like suppression. The media frenzy faded, and the door remained sealed, its secrets untouched. Why? What could lie behind a slab of stone that warranted such a swift silencing? The question lingered, unanswered, for nearly a decade. In 2002, a new team was granted access, armed with a more advanced robot, the Pyramid Rover, equipped with cameras, drills, and fiber optic technology. The world tuned in again, expecting answers after years of silence. Live broadcasts promised to reveal what lay beyond the mysterious door. The robot navigated the same southern shaft, its cameras capturing the same flawless stonework, until it reached the door with its copper pins. With painstaking care, it drilled a small hole through the slab, a process that revealed the stone's incredible hardness, as if designed to resist intrusion. A fiber optic camera was inserted, and the world held its breath, anticipating treasures, inscriptions, or a glimpse into the pyramid's heart. What the camera showed was another chamber empty, precise, and silent, with a second stone door on the far wall. No hieroglyphs, no artifacts, just more stone, more mystery, and another barrier. This discovery only deepened the enigma. Why build a shaft too narrow for humans, leading to a sealed door, only to hide another door behind it? The chamber's walls were as smooth as the shafts, its construction as meticulous, suggesting a purpose beyond decoration or ritual. The copper pins, hammered flat, seemed to mark the first door as significant, perhaps a warning or a symbol of something sacred. But the second door, identical in its silence, hinted at a design meant to delay, to confound, to protect something not meant to be reached. The broadcast ended, the press cycle faded, and no further expeditions were launched. The second door remains unopened, its secrets locked away, and the official narrative returned to silence. Some claimed the mystery was solved. The shafts were symbolic, the doors meaningless, the chamber empty. But emptiness isn't absence. It's a choice, a design, a statement carved in stone. The implications are profound. The shafts and doors suggest the Great Pyramid hides spaces we've never seen, built with a precision that challenges our understanding of ancient technology. The shafts maintain exact alignments over 60 meters, their angles never deviating, their surfaces flawless. This isn't the work of crude tools or hasty construction, it's the product of a vision that planned every detail. The copper pins, made of a metal sacred to Egyptian religion, add another layer. Copper, associated with the gods and divine power, was rare and difficult to work with in ancient times. Why place it in a passage no one could enter? Some speculate the pins are markers, not for opening the door but for signaling its importancia boundary not to be crossed, a secret not to be revealed. This brings us to a bold hypothesis. The doors might lead to the fabled Hall of Records, a chamber described by the mystic Edgar Cayce in the early 20th century. Cayce claimed that beneath the Sphinx and within the pyramid lies a repository of knowledge from a lost civilization, possibly Atlantis, containing texts, tools, or even technologies that could rewrite history. The radar anomalies beneath the Sphinx, detected in the 1980s and 2000s, support the idea of hidden spaces, and the pyramid's shafts could connect to this network. The doors, sealed with such care, might protect this archive, meant only for a time or a people ready to understand it. The copper pins, symbolic of divine connection, could mark the threshold to this sacred knowledge, a test of wisdom rather than force. But why stop the exploration? The silencing of Gantenbrink and the halt after the Pyramid Rover's discovery suggest more than caution. It suggests fear. The Egyptian authorities, backed by institutions like the Supreme Council of Antiquities, have consistently blocked access to sensitive sites. Is it about preserving the monuments or preserving a narrative? If the doors lead to evidence of a civilization predating Egypt, one with advanced technology or knowledge, it would unravel the timeline of human history. The pyramid, credited to Khufu, would become a relic of an older world, and Egyptology's foundation would crumble. This threat might explain the pattern of denial tunnels sealed, radar data dismissed, researchers turned away. It's as if the truth behind the doors is too dangerous to face. This pattern isn't unique to Giza. In Mesoamerica, excavations at Teotihuacan uncovered tunnels beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, sealed for centuries, yet exploration was limited by official restrictions. In Turkey, the ancient site of Göbekli Tepe, dating back 12,000 years, faced delays in study, its implications for early civilization too disruptive to embrace quickly. The doors in the Great Pyramid fit this mold. Discoveries that challenge the story of human progress are met with silence, not science. Could there be a global effort, ancient or modern, to keep certain truths hidden? Some even whisper of extraterrestrial involvement, suggesting the pyramid's precision and hidden chambers point to alien architects, a theory popularized by Erich von Däniken. While speculative, it underscores the question, Why build something so complex, so inaccessible, unless it was meant to remain a mystery? Picture Cairo in the late 1800s, a city alive with the fever of discovery. European collectors, scholars, and adventurers scoured Egypt's markets and monasteries, hungry for relics of its ancient past. The 19th century was the golden age of Egyptomania, when every artifact, every papyrus, promised to unlock the secrets of a civilization that had captivated the world. In a quiet Coptic monastery, tucked away from the bustle of Cairo's streets, a collector, perhaps Austrian, perhaps French, met an elderly monk, the keeper of a small bundle of manuscripts. These were no ordinary texts. Coptic monasteries, for centuries, had been sanctuaries of knowledge, preserving fragments of early Christian and pre-Islamic writings through wars, invasions, and time's relentless march. The monk claimed his collection held treasures passed down for generations, texts that had survived when empires fell, copied and recopied by hands that revered their weight. Among these manuscripts was a scroll that stood apart. Written in Sahidic Coptic, a dialect of Egypt's early Christian era, it was laced with older phrases the monk could not read, hints of a language predating even the Coptic tongue. The scroll's contents, as described to the collector, were staggering. It spoke of a land along the Nile before its modern course, before the river's great bend, before the delta formed. It described 3 great beacons of stone knot named as pyramids, but as structures aligned to the stars, sealed not as tombs but as vaults of memory. The text called them ancient, built before language, before the Nile changed its path, before the kings of Egypt rose to power. When the collector pressed for meaning, the monk's words were cryptic. They were built before words, before the river knew its place. This was no myth of pharaohs or gods, it was a glimpse into a time before history as we know it. The collector purchased the scroll, along with others, and took it to Europe, where Orientalist scholars waited to decipher its secrets. The 19th century was a time of meticulous study, with universities and museums investing heavily in translating ancient texts. Linguists would have pored over the Coptic script, historians cross-referenced it with known sources, and archaeologists sought to match its descriptions to physical sites. The scroll promised to be a Rosetta Stone of sorts, a key to a chapter of human history we've never read. Its mention of the pyramids as beacons and vaults of memory suggested they were not tombs but something else, perhaps repositories of knowledge, built to survive a catastrophe that erased their creators. If true, this text could have shattered the timeline of Egyptian civilization, placing the pyramids in a prehistoric era tied to a people we've never named. But before a single word could be translated, tragedy struck her, so we're told. The details are maddeningly vague. Some accounts say a fire consumed the collector's private study, reducing the scroll to ash. Others claim it was an archive building, perhaps in Vienna or Lyon, where the manuscript was stored. The uncertainty itself is suspicious, as if the story was meant to blur into obscurity. What we know is this: the scroll was lost, along with much of the collector's collection, in a blaze that left no copies, no photographs, no detailed notes. This was no ordinary loss. In the 19th century, scholars understood the fragility of ancient texts. Important manuscripts were routinely copied, sketched, or described to prevent such disasters. The Nag Hammadi library, another Coptic treasure, survived because of such care. Yet this scroll, potentially the most significant find of its time, vanished without a trace, leaving only a second-hand letter quoting the monk's cryptic words about the Nile and the beacons. This disappearance feels too convenient, too perfectly timed. A text that might have placed the pyramids before language, before Egypt, was destroyed just as it reached the hands of those who could read it. The letter, the only surviving reference, offers no details beyond the monk's claim, as if the scroll's very existence was meant to be a whisper, not a shout. Historians dismiss the story as a misunderstanding, suggesting the scroll, if it existed, was a late Gnostic fable, a symbolic retelling of Egypt's mythic past. They point to the 19th century trade in fake relics, where locals sold forged artifacts to eager Europeans. But this explanation feels like containment, a way to tuck an uncomfortable possibility out of sight. If the scroll was a fake, why destroy it before its authenticity could be tested? Why ensure that no scholar, no linguist, could ever examine its words? The scroll's loss fits a disturbing pattern. Across history, texts that challenge established narratives have a habit of disappearing. In the 1700s, French scholars reported an inscription near Aswan, listing kings predating Menes, the supposed first pharaoh of Egypt. It could have extended Egypt's chronology by thousands of years, but the wall collapsed in an earthquake, its rubbings lost, the site never re-excavated. In the early 20th century, a German linguist claimed to have translated a Nubian papyrus, mentioning stones of resonance west of the Nile, only to die in World War I, his notes scattered. Each incident, alone, seems like misfortune. Together, they suggest a designant invisible hand ensuring that certain truths never survive long enough to be heard. The Coptic scroll, with its talk of pyramids before language, fits this mold perfectly. It wasn't lost to time's decay but to a fire that burned at the exact moment it might have spoken too much. What makes the scroll so haunting is what it might have said. If it described the pyramids as vaults of memory built before the Nile's modern course, it aligns with other clues we've uncovered. The Sphinx's water erosion points to a time 7,000 years ago, when rains fell on a green Sahara. The Great Pyramid's mathematical codes suggest knowledge of Earth's dimensions and cosmic cycles. The underground network beneath Giza hints at an infrastructure older than the pharaohs. The scroll could have tied these threads together, naming a civilization that built Giza's wonders before Egypt existed, a civilization that sealed its knowledge in stone, knowing its world was fading. The monk's words, "before the Nile changed," are particularly chilling. Geological records confirm the Nile's course shifted over millennia, its delta forming around 4000 BCE. If the scroll dated the pyramids to this earlier era, it would place them in a prehistoric world, challenging our understanding of human progress. This brings us to a darker question. Who had the power to destroy such a text, and why? The fire wasn't an act of war or conquest, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria or the destruction of Maya codices by Spanish conquistadors. It happened in peacetime, in the hands of a collector who had every reason to preserve it. Was it an accident, or was it erased to protect a narrative? If the scroll proved the pyramids predated Egypt, it would unravel the myth of pharaonic creation, suggesting the Egyptians were inheritors, not originators. It would force us to rethink the origins of monumental architecture, the spread of advanced knowledge, and the possibility of a lost civilization, perhaps Atlantis, as Plato described, or another culture erased by catastrophe. Such a truth might have been too dangerous, not for national security, but for the stories we tell about our place in history. As you drift towards sleep, imagine holding that fragile scroll, its ink fading under your touch, its words hinting at a world before words. The Coptic scroll is gone, but its absence speaks louder than its text ever could. It's a reminder that some truths are too vast to be kept, too fragile to survive the flames of time or the hands that light them. The scroll burned, but its echo lingers, a whisper of a time when the pyramids stood before kings, before language, before the Nile carved its path, waiting for us to remember what was never meant to be forgotten. The Giza Plateau is a monument to human ingenuity, or so we're told. The Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, the temple saw credited to the 4th dynasty, a testament to Egypt's golden age. Yet, every clue we've explored points to a different story. Water erosion, suggesting a prehistoric origin, mathematical codes too advanced for their time, empty chambers that defy burial traditions, and texts like the Inventory Stela and Dream Stela that describe restoration, not creation. Beneath the plateau, a network of tunnels and voids hints at an older purpose, while robots uncover sealed doors that no one is allowed to open. A scroll, speaking of pyramids before language, vanishes in flames. Each discovery, each anomaly, is met with the same response: dismissal, denial, or outright erasure. This isn't random. It's a pattern, a deliberate effort to control what we know about Giza, and it raises a chilling question. What truth is so dangerous that it must be hidden at all costs? The heart of this concealment lies with Egyptology itself, a field built on rigorous study, but also on rigid narratives. The accepted timeline places the Great Pyramid and Sphinx in the 4th dynasty, around 2580 BCE, constructed by Khufu and Khafre, with copper tools and human labor. This story is neat, logical, and comforting. It fits our understanding of human progress, a steady climb from primitive to civilized. But when evidence challenges this timeline, it's not met with curiosity but with resistance. The inventory Stela, which suggests Khufu restored the Sphinx, is tucked away in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, rarely displayed, dismissed as late-period propaganda from the 26th dynasty. The dream Stela, recounting Thutmose IV's divine encounter, is labelled a political myth, its implications ignored. The water erosion on the Sphinx, pointing to a time 7,000 years ago, is brushed off as the work of wind or groundwater, despite geological evidence to the contrary. Why? Why does every anomaly face the same fate? Buried, discredited, or forgotten? This pattern of dismissal is what scholars call intellectual gatekeeping. Egyptology, like any academic field, guards its foundations fiercely. The timeline of the Old Kingdom is a cornerstone, built on decades of research, carbon dating, and artifacts like the Diary of Mira, which describes limestone transport for Khufu's pyramid. To admit that Giza's monuments might predate Egypt, or that they were built by a lost civilization with advanced knowledge, would unravel this foundation. It would force a rewrite of not just Egyptian history but human history, suggesting that sophisticated societies existed thousands of years before we thought possible. Such a shift would challenge careers, reputations, and the authority of institutions like the Supreme Council of Antiquities, which oversees Egypt's archaeological sites. The stakes are high not just for science, but for power. Consider the treatment of the underground network beneath Giza. In 2008, ground-penetrating radar revealed a complex of chambers, tunnels, and voids, some matching 19th-century reports by explorers like Wallace Budge and Napoleon's team. These spaces, with their precise cuts and geometric patterns, suggest a purpose beyond tombs and infrastructure, perhaps for a civilization we don't know. Yet, the Egyptian authorities declared, there is nothing there. Photographs of carved passages, radar scans showing artificial cavities, and historical maps were ignored or suppressed. Access was revoked, researchers turned away, and the findings vanished from public discourse. This echoes earlier incidents. A 1930s excavation beneath the Sphinx uncovered a chamber, only to be backfilled without study. Rudolf Gantenbrink's robot, Upuat 2, was halted after finding a sealed door in 1993. The Pyramid rover's 2002 discovery of another door led to no further exploration. Each time, the door to discovery slams shut. This isn't just about protecting artifacts from damage. The Supreme Council of Antiquities, backed by the Egyptian government, controls access to Giza with an iron grip. Excavations require permits, funding, and official approval, often tied to political and economic interests. Tourism is Egypt's lifeblood, and the narrative of Giza as a pharaonic achievement drives millions of visitors each year. A story of a lost civilization, of pyramids predating Egypt, could disrupt this industry, casting doubt on the nation's cultural heritage. But the conspiracy runs deeper. Some speculate that global institutions, like UNESCO, which funds and regulates archaeological sites, have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. A discovery that rewrites history could destabilize not just Egyptology, but our understanding of human progress, challenging the linear narrative of civilization's rise. And then there's a stranger possibility, one whispered in the fringes of speculation. Could the concealment involve forces beyond academia or government? The precision of the Great Pyramid, its alignment with Orion's belt, its encoding of mathematical constants like pi and Fithi's anomalies, have fueled theories of extraterrestrial influence, popularized by authors like Erich von Däniken. If Giza's monuments were built with otherworldly knowledge, or if the underground chambers hold evidence of advanced technology, revealing them could upend more than history books. It could challenge our place in the cosmos, suggesting contact with beings we're not ready to acknowledge. While this idea stretches credulity, it underscores the stakes. A truth that alters our understanding of humanity's past might be too disruptive to be allowed into the light. The pattern of erasure extends beyond Giza. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets describing pre-flood civilizations were dismissed as myths until excavations like Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years old, proved otherwise. In Mesoamerica, the Maya codices were burned by Spanish conquistadors, erasing knowledge that might have rivaled European science. The Coptic scroll, describing pyramids before language, fits this Mulder text that could have shattered Egyptology, lost in a suspiciously timed fire. These incidents, spread across centuries and continents, suggest a systematic effort to control what we know about our origins. It's not about destroying every trace, but about managing information, ensuring that only the right story survives. The inventory Stela is hidden in a museum. The underground chambers are sealed. The robots are stopped each act a brick in a wall of silence. This conspiracy of concealment isn't just about power, it's about fear. If Giza's monuments were built by a civilization before Egypt, one with knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering beyond our assumptions, it forces us to confront the fragility of our own story. The pharaohs, revered as living gods, become mere caretakers, their divine authority a borrowed mantle. The timeline of human progress, so carefully constructed, becomes a lie, revealing gaps where advanced societies might have risen and fallen, their achievements buried by catastrophe or design. The institutions that guard Giza Egypt's government, global organizations, even the academic world may fear not just the truth but its implications, that we are not the pinnacle of history, but a chapter in a cycle of forgetting and rediscovery. As you sink towards sleep, imagine standing before the Great Pyramid, its stones gleaming under the stars, its secrets locked in chambers and scrolls we'll never see. The conspiracy of concealment is not a single act, but a shadow cast across centuries, a refusal to let certain truths breathe. The stelae, the tunnels, the doors, the burned manuscript, they all point to a Giza that belongs to a time before Egypt, a time we're not supposed to know. The gatekeepers may lock the doors, but the stones still whisper, and their voices grow louder in the silence of the night, urging us to ask, what are they so afraid we'll find? We confront the heart of the mystery, the technology behind the Great Pyramid, a marvel of precision so advanced it challenges everything we believe about ancient capabilities. Was this the work of copper tools and human labor, or something far beyond our understanding? Lie back, let the desert's whisper surround you, and listen as we explore a technology that seems to belong to another world. The internal passages, the descending passage, the grand gallery, the king's chamberari constructed with such exactness that joints are invisible, angles unwavering, and stability unyielding after 500 years. We're told this was the work of Pharaoh Khufu's 4th dynasty, around 2580 BCE, using ropes, ramps, and copper chisels. But the deeper we look, the more implausible this explanation becomes, as if the pyramid was built with tools and knowledge we can't explain, tools that feel alien to the time we assign them. Consider the sheer scale of the task. The Great Pyramid contains enough stone to build a wall around a small country, with blocks cut from quarries sometimes hundreds of miles away. The granite in the king's chamber, sourced from Aswan 800 kilometers south, was shaped with a precision that leaves no gap for even a sheet of paper. Modern experiments show that copper tools, the best available to the Egyptians, struggle to cut limestone, let alone granite, which ranks among the hardest stones known. To achieve the pyramid's smooth surfaces and tight joints, workers would have needed tools of exceptional durability, perhaps bronze or iron, neither of which existed in significant use during the Old Kingdom. The logistics are equally daunting. Moving a 15-ton block across desert terrain, lifting it hundreds of feet, and placing it with sub-millimeter accuracy would challenge today's cranes and lasers. Yet, we're told, this was done with sleds, rollers, and human muscle, guided by starlight and water levels. The precision of the pyramid's alignment raises even more questions. Its base is oriented to the cardinal points with an error of just 0.05 degrees, a feat requiring advanced surveying techniques. Modern builders, using GPS and satellite navigation, struggle to achieve such accuracy on this scale. The Egyptians had no compasses, no theodolites, yet they aligned a 13-acre structure to true north with near-perfect fidelity. The base is so level that the variation 2.1 centimeter implies a mastery of topography that defies the uneven limestone plateau it sits upon. To prepare such a foundation, workers would have needed to measure and level vast areas with tools we have no record of, coordinating hundreds of laborers with a precision that rivals modern engineering software. The internal passages, like the Grand Gallery with its corbelled ceiling, distribute millions of tons of weight so effectively that the structure has endured earthquakes and invasions unscathed. This isn't trial and error construction. It's the work of a mind that understood physics, geometry, and materials science on a level we associate with the modern era. But it's not just the construction that feels otherworldly. The pyramid's design incorporates knowledge that seems impossible for its time. The air shafts in the king's chamber, narrow and inaccessible, align with Orion's belt and the pole star as they appeared around 2450 BCE, requiring an understanding of stellar motion and precessiona 25, 920-year cycle in Earth's axial wobble. The Egyptians tracked the Nile's floods using stars, but no text suggests they calculated such long-term astronomical patterns. The pyramid's dimensions encode mathematical constants. The perimeter divided by the height yields 2 pi. The slope embeds the golden ratio, phi. These ratios, precise to within fractions of a percent, suggest a grasp of advanced mathematics not documented in Egyptian records, which focus on practical geometry for land measurement, not universal constants. Even more astonishing, multiplying the height by 43,200 approximates the Earth's polar radius, and the base perimeter by the same factor matches the equatorial circumference. This scaling factor, tied to precession, implies knowledge of the planet's shape and size, concepts not formalized until centuries later. This level of sophistication invites a radical question. Could the Great Pyramid be the product of a technology we've lost, or one we've never understood? The tools and methods attributed to the Egyptian scopper chisels, wooden ramps fall short of explaining the pyramid's precision. Some researchers propose alternative techniques, like acoustic levitation or advanced cutting methods, though no direct evidence supports these ideas. In ancient texts from other cultures, we find echoes of such possibilities. The Sumerian Enuma Elish describes gods shaping the world with tools of divine power, while Indian texts like the Mahabharata mention devices that move stones with sound or light. Could the pyramid's builders have used similar methods, lost when their civilization vanished? The absence of tool marks on the pyramid's stones, especially in the smooth granite of the king's chamber, suggests a technology that worked stone with a finesse beyond chisels, perhaps abrasives, precision saws, or something we can't yet name. This idea finds parallels in other ancient sites. At Stonehenge, 5,000 years old, massive sarsen stones were moved dozens of miles and erected with alignments to the solstices, requiring engineering we struggle to explain. In Peru, Machu Picchu's stone walls, built by the Inca, feature blocks so tightly fitted that they seem to defy gravity, with no mortar and no visible tool marks. The Baalbek trilithons in Lebanon, weighing up to 800 tons, were cut and placed with a precision that challenges modern cranes. Most striking is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a 12,000-year-old complex of carved pillars, some 20 tons, built before agriculture or writing. These sites, like Giza, suggest a global tradition of advanced construction, a knowledge that appeared suddenly and vanished just as quickly. Could the Great Pyramid be part of this network, a remnant of a civilization that spanned continents, leaving its mark in stone before fading into oblivion? The most provocative theory goes further, suggesting extraterrestrial influence. Authors like Erich von Däniken argue that the pyramid's precision, alignments, and mathematical codes point to alien architects or advisors who shared advanced technology with early humans. The idea is fringe, but it gains traction from the pyramid's anomalies. How could a culture with no recorded knowledge of calculus or astronomy achieve such feats? The lack of inscriptions, the empty chambers, the cosmic alignments all could be signs of a purpose not rooted in human ambition but in a message meant for the stars. While speculative, this theory underscores the gap between what we see and what we can explain, forcing us to consider possibilities beyond our current understanding. A more grounded hypothesis is that the pyramid was a technological marvel meant to preserve knowledge through catastrophe. Its Silencino hieroglyphs, no royal claims, suggests a universal design meant for any civilization that could measure its proportions. The constants encoded in its form phi, Earth's dimensions are timeless, surviving the collapse of languages and cultures. Unlike papyrus or clay tablets, stone endures, and the pyramid's resilience proves it was built for geological time, not human reigns. Could its builders have foreseen a disaster, a flood, a climate shift, a societal collapse, and constructed a monument to safeguard their understanding? The African humid period, ending around 4000 BCE, transformed the Sahara from a green paradise to a desert, displacing populations. If the pyramid predates this shift, as the Sphinx's erosion suggests, it might be a beacon from a lost world, designed to guide future generations back to the truths they left behind. Picture the Great Pyramid under a starlit sky, its stones silent yet alive with purpose. Its technology, whether human, divine, or otherworldly, speaks through precision, not words, a language of angles and alignments that outlasts empires. The builders, whoever they were, left no name, only a challenge, to measure, to question, to wonder. Tonight, we chase a legend that has haunted humanity for millenniath tale of Atlantis, a lost civilization of unparalleled wisdom, said to have vanished in a single night. Could the monuments of Giza be its legacy, a final echo of a people erased by catastrophe? Lie back, let the desert stillness cradle you, and listen as we explore the possibility that Giza's wonders were built by a civilization we've forgotten. The story of Atlantis begins with Plato, the Greek philosopher, who wrote of it in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias around 360 BCE. He described a mighty civilization, flourishing 9,000 years before his time, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, likely the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis was a marvel of architecture, engineering, and culture, its people masters of navigation, astronomy, and technology. Their island, rich with resources, boasted concentric canals, grand temples, and palaces of gleaming stone. But their hubris angered the gods, and in a single day and night, earthquakes and floods swallowed Atlantis into the sea, leaving no trace but a story passed down through generations. Plato's account, dismissed by many as allegory, has fueled speculation for centuries. Could this lost civilization be the key to Giza's mysteries? Its monuments a remnant of a world that vanished long before Egypt's rise. The Great Pyramid and Sphinx, with their anomalies, fit eerily into this narrative. The Sphinx's water erosion, as proposed by geologist Robert Schoch, points to a time 7,000 to 10,000 years ago, when heavy rains fell on a green Sahara. This aligns with Plato's timeline for Atlantis, placing its fall around 9,600 BCE, during the end of the African humid period, when climate shifts turned lush landscapes into desert. The pyramid's mathematical codes phi, and Earth's dimensions suggest a knowledge of astronomy and geometry far beyond what we attribute to the Fourth Dynasty. Its precision, with a base level to 2.1 centimeters and a line to true north within 0.05 degrees, implies a technology that strains the limits of copper tools and human labor. Could these monuments be the work of Atlantean survivors, fleeing their sinking homeland to build a lasting testament on the Nile's banks? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it seems when we look beyond Egypt. Across the world, ancient sites hint at a lost chapter of human history. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to 9600 BCE, features massive stone pillars, some 20 tons, carved with intricate reliefs, and aligned with celestial events. Built before agriculture or writing, it challenges our view of prehistoric societies as primitive. In Japan, the Yonaguni Monument, submerged off the coast, displays terraces and angles that suggest human craftsmanship from a time when sea levels were lower, possibly 10,000 years ago. In Bolivia, Puma Punku's stone blocks, cut with laser-like precision, defy explanation with Inca tools. These sites, like Giza, share a hallmark. They appear suddenly, fully formed, with no clear predecessors, as if drawing on a knowledge that vanished with its creators. Could Atlantis, or a civilization like it, have been the source, its influence spreading across continents before a cataclysm erased its heart? The Giza Plateau offers clues that resonate with this theory. The underground network beneath the pyramids and Sphinx, mapped by radar in 2008, reveals chambers and tunnels too precise to be natural, suggesting an infrastructure older than the pharaohs. The Osiris shaft, with its empty stone box and strange acoustics, feels less like a tomb and more like a relic of a purpose we can't name. The Coptic scroll, lost to fire, spoke of beacons of stone, built before language, a description that echoes Plato's account of Atlantis's grand architecture. The inventory stela and dream stela portray Khufu and Thutmose IV as restorers, not builders, as if Giza's monuments were inherited from a time before Egypt. Together, these hints paint a picture of a civilization that left its mark in stone, knowing its world was fading, its knowledge at risk of being forgotten. But what kind of civilization could achieve this? Plato described Atlantis as a society of advanced engineers, capable of building harbors, canals, and temples that rivaled the wonders of Greece. If the Great Pyramid was their work, its construction 2.3 million blocks, some 15 tons, placed with sub-millimeter accuracy suggests a mastery of logistics, mathematics, and materials science. The pyramid's alignment with Orion's belt and the pole star, tied to the precession cycle of 25,920 years, implies an understanding of astronomy that Egypt's records don't reflect. The absence of hieroglyphs, so unlike Egyptian tombs, could indicate a culture that valued universal symbols geometry, ratios over transient languages. Atlantis, or a similar civilization, might have built Giza as a time capsule, encoding knowledge in stone to survive a catastrophe they foresaw, whether flood, quake, or climate shift. This brings us to the legend of the Hall of Records, a concept popularized by the mystic Edgar Cayce in the early 20th century. Cayce claimed that beneath the Sphinx lies a chamber containing the wisdom of Atlantis texts, tools, perhaps technologies that could redefine our past. Radar scans in the 1980s and 2000s detected voids beneath the Sphinx and pyramids, supporting the idea of hidden spaces. The sealed doors found by robots in the Great Pyramid's shafts, one in 1993 by Upuot-2 and another in 2002 by the Pyramid rover, could lead to such a chamber. The copper pins on the first door, symbolic of divine power, might mark a threshold to this archive, meant only for those ready to understand its contents. The Egyptian authorities' refusal to explore these spaces, dismissing them as nothing, fuels speculation that they know or fear what lies within. The Atlantis theory also connects to a broader pattern of lost civilizations. In Sumerian texts, the Enuma Elish speaks of a world before the flood, shaped by gods with divine tools. The Hindu Mahabharata describes ancient cities with technologies that sound like science fiction. These myths, across cultures, share a common thread, a golden age of knowledge ended by catastrophe, leaving only fragments in stone or story. The end of the African humid period, around 4000 BCE, transformed the Sahara into a desert, forcing populations to the Nile where Egypt would rise. If Atlantis existed, its survivors might have carried their knowledge to Giza, building monuments to preserve what their island could not. The Sphinx's erosion, the pyramids' codes, the underground network all could be their legacy, a message to future generations that their world once was. Yet, The silence surrounding these possibilities is deafening. The Egyptian authorities, backed by institutions like UNESCO, tightly control Giza's excavations. Discoveries that challenge the 4th Dynasty timeliner radar scans, robot findings, ancient texts are dismissed or suppressed. This pattern of concealment, as we've seen, suggests a fear not of artifacts but of ideas. If Giza was built by a lost civilization, it would mean the pharaohs were not the architects of their greatest wonders, but inheritors, claiming a legacy they couldn't replicate. It would force us to rethink human progress, admitting that advanced societies rose and fell long before our records begin. The legend of Atlantis, whether literal or symbolic, embodies this fearer reminder that our history might be a cycle of forgetting, not a straight line to glory. Imagine the lost shores of Atlantis, its temples sinking beneath the waves, its people scattering to build one final monument under Egypt's stars. The Great Pyramid and Sphinx stand as their echo, silent yet enduring, their secrets buried in stone and sand. The legend of Atlantis is more than a story, it's a question, asking us to look beyond the pharaohs, beyond our timelines, to a civilization that left its mark not to be remembered, but to ensure we never forget what we've lost. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a marvel of stone, its 2.3 million blocks a testament to precision that defies ancient tools. But it's not just the visible structure that captivates, it's the invisible, the way sound moves within its chambers, as if the builders understood principles of acoustics we're only beginning to grasp. Step into the king's chamber, the granite heart of the pyramid, and you'll feel it, a space where whispers linger, where certain tones seem to vibrate the air itself. The chamber, built from massive granite blocks hauled from Aswan 800 kilometers away, is a box of perfect proportions, 10 meters long, 5 meters wide, 5.8 meters high. Its walls, fitted so tightly no blade can slip between, create an acoustic environment unlike any other in Egypt. Speak softly, and your voice carries with unnatural clarity. Chant a low note, and the stone seems to hum in response, as if tuned to a frequency woven into its design. This isn't imagination, it's measurable. Researchers, including acoustic engineers, have studied the king's chamber and found that its dimensions align with harmonic ratios, creating a resonance that amplifies specific frequencies. A tone at around 110 Hz, for instance, produces a standing wave, a vibration that feels almost physical, as if the chamber was built to capture and enhance sound. The granite, rich in quartz, is a natural conductor of vibration, its crystalline structure capable of resonating like a tuning fork. When struck or exposed to certain sounds, the stone vibrates, sustaining notes in ways that suggest intentional design. This isn't the chaotic echo of a cave or tombits a controlled acoustic space, engineered to manipulate sound with a precision that rivals modern concert halls. The phenomenon extends beyond the king's chamber. Deep beneath the Giza plateau, in the Osiris shaft near Khafre's causeway, another acoustic mystery unfolds. This vertical tunnel, plunging over 30 meters into the bedrock, ends in a chamber with 6 side niches and a stone box, empty of any burial traces. Here, too, sound behaves strangely. Whispers carry across the room with startling clarity, while louder sounds seem muffled, absorbed by the stone. Acoustic tests reveal that the chamber resonates at low frequencies, around 100, 120 Hz, creating a sensation that some describe as trance-like, as if the space was designed to alter perception. The smooth walls, carved with consistent tool marks, enhance this effect, suggesting a deliberate understanding of how sound interacts with stone. This isn't a tombits, a chamber built to sing, to hold vibrations that connect the physical and the intangible. What could this mean? In ancient Egypt, sound was sacred, tied to creation and divine order. The god Thoth, master of wisdom, was said to have spoken the world into being, and priests used chants, music, and instruments to commune with the gods. But the acoustics of the Great Pyramid and Osiris shaft go beyond ritual. They suggest a technology of sound, a mastery of physics that could harness vibrations for purposes we can't fully comprehend. Some researchers propose that the king's chamber was a resonance chamber designed to amplify specific frequencies for spiritual or practical effects. The low hum of 110 Hz, for example, is known to induce calmness or altered states of consciousness, a phenomenon studied in modern neuroscience. Could the pyramid's builders have used sound to influence the mind, to connect with cosmic forces, or even to manipulate energy? This idea finds echoes in other ancient cultures. In Malta, the hypogeum of Ol Saflieni, a 5000-year-old underground temple, has chambers tuned to resonate at 110, 111 Hz, creating effects that some believe were used for rituals or healing. In Peru, Chavin de Huantar's stone corridors amplify low-frequency sounds, guiding priests through darkened passages with acoustic cues. These sites, like Giza, suggest a global tradition of acoustic engineering, where sound was not just art but technology, used to shape experience or environment. The Great Pyramid's granite, with its quartz content, could act as a piezoelectric material, generating small electrical charges under vibration. While speculative, this aligns with theories inspired by Nikola Tesla, who believed ancient structures could harness Earth's natural energies through resonance. Could the pyramid be a machine, not of gears but of frequencies, built to tap into forces we've forgotten how to use? The implications are profound. If the pyramid and its subterranean chambers were designed for resonance, they might serve a purpose beyond symbolism. Some researchers, like engineer Christopher Dunn, argue that the Great Pyramid was a power generator, using sound or vibration to produce energy. The King's Chamber, with its granite and precise dimensions, could focus acoustic waves, perhaps to charge objects, influence materials, or even communicate across distances. The air shafts, aligned with stars, might have served as conduits, not for air but for energy, connecting the pyramid to cosmic rhythms. While no direct evidence supports this, the chamber's acoustics and the pyramid's precision align to true north, encoding pi and Phi suggest a knowledge of physics that surpasses Egypt's documented capabilities. The Osiris shaft, with its similar acoustic properties, could be part of this system, a subterranean counterpart designed to resonate in harmony with the pyramid above. This brings us to a bolder question. Who possessed such knowledge? The Egyptians of the 4th dynasty were skilled builders, but their texts show no understanding of advanced acoustics or piezoelectric effects. Their tool scopper chisels, wooden levers couldn't produce the flawless granite surfaces of the king's chamber. The absence of hieroglyphs in the pyramid, so unlike other Egyptian tombs, suggests a purpose not tied to their religion. Could this technology belong to a lost civilization, one that understood sound as a force, not just a ritual? The Coptic scroll, burned before translation, spoke of beacons of stone built before language, hinting at a people who left their mark in Giza. The Sphinx's water erosion, dated to 7,000 years ago, supports this, as does the underground network, with its precise chambers suggesting a forgotten infrastructure. The resonance of Giza also connects to the legend of Atlantis, described by Plato as a civilization of advanced engineers. If Atlantis existed, its survivors might have brought their knowledge to the Nile, building monuments to preserve their science through a coming catastrophe. The acoustic properties of the pyramid and Osiris shaft could be remnants of this technology, designed to harness sound for purposes we can't fathom, perhaps healing, communication, or energy production. The pattern of concealment we've uncovered, sealed tunnels, silenced robots, burned scrolls, suggests that modern authorities fear this truth. The Egyptian government, backed by institutions like UNESCO, restricts access to Giza's sensitive sites. Could they be hiding evidence of an ancient technology too powerful or too alien to reveal? This fear of revelation isn't unique to Egypt. In India, the ancient city of Dwarka, submerged off the coast, is said to house structures with advanced engineering, yet excavations are limited. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform texts hint at divine weapons that manipulated sound or light, dismissed as myth. The conspiracy of silence, as we've seen, guards Giza's secrets with locked gates and official denials. If the pyramid's acoustics were part of a technology from a lost civilization, revealing them could challenge our view of human progress, suggesting we're not the first to master such forces. Some even speculate an extraterrestrial origin, as Erich von Däniken proposed, pointing to the pyramid's precision as evidence of alien guidance. While fringe, this idea underscores the mystery. The technology of Giza feels beyond human, beyond ancient, beyond us. Could the Great Pyramid and Sphinx be the work of extraterrestrial beings, visitors from the stars who left their mark in stone? The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a monument to the impossible. The internal chambers, like the King's Chamber, are built with granite hauled 800 kilometers, fitted so tightly no blade can slip between. The air shafts point to Orion's belt and the pole star, as they appeared in 2450 BCE, suggesting knowledge of stellar motion beyond Egypt's records. The pyramid encodes mathematical constants by phi, Earth's dimensions in ways that imply a grasp of geometry and astronomy not documented in the 4th dynasty. The Sphinx, with its water erosion from 7,000 years ago, hints at an even older origin. These anomalies strain the narrative of copper tools and human labor. Could they point to a source beyond Earth, a civilization from the cosmos that shaped Giza's wonders? This idea, radical as it sounds, was popularized by Erich von Däniken in his 1968 book Chariots of the Gods. Von Däniken argued that ancient monuments, like the Great Pyramid, could only be explained by extraterrestrial intervention. The precision of Giza's construction, he claimed, required technology far beyond what humans possessed 4,500 years ago. Moving 15-ton blocks, aligning structures to celestial bodies, encoding universal constants, these feats suggest tools or knowledge not found in Egyptian texts. The absence of hieroglyphs in the pyramid, unlike every other royal tomb, adds to the mystery. Why build such a monument and leave no claim, no story, unless the builders were not of this world, their purpose not tied to human glory? Von Däniken proposed that aliens visited Earth, sharing their technology with early humans, or building these structures as beacons, observatories, or even landing sites. The evidence, while speculative, is compelling when viewed through this lens. The Great Pyramid's alignment to true north, within a fraction of a degree, requires a global perspective knowledge of Earth's axis and magnetic field, concepts not recorded in ancient Egypt. The air shaft stellar alignments, targeting Orion and the pole star, suggest a fixation on the cosmos, as if the pyramid were a bridge between Earth and the heavens. Orion, in Egyptian mythology, was linked to Osiris, god of rebirth. But the precision of these alignments implies a scientific understanding, not just religious symbolism. The pyramid's mathematical codes its perimeter yielding 2 pi when divided by its height, its slope embedding the golden ratio point to a universal language, one that might resonate with beings who navigate the stars. The lack of inscriptions, so unlike Egypt's verbose tombs, could mean the builders spoke through geometry, a language that transcends planets. Beyond Giza, other ancient sites fuel this hypothesis. In Peru, the Nazca Line's massive geoglyphs visible only from the air stretch across the desert, their purpose unknown. Were they signals to skyward visitors, as von Däniken suggested? In Bolivia, Pumapunku's stone blocks, cut with precision that defies Inca tools, seem to belong to a technology we can't explain. The megaliths of Baalbek, Lebanon, weighing up to 800 tons, challenge human engineering even today. These sites, like Giza, share a hallmark. They appear suddenly, with no clear technological predecessors, as if gifted by a source beyond Earth. The Sumerian Anunnaki, gods said to come from the heavens, are described in ancient texts as teachers of civilization. Could they, or beings like them, have guided the construction of Giza, leaving monuments as proof of their presence? The underground network beneath Giza adds another layer. Radar scans in 2008 revealed chambers and tunnels, some with geometric precision, suggesting an infrastructure older than the pharaohs. The Osiris shaft, with its empty stone box and eerie acoustics, resonates at frequencies that alter perception, hinting at a purpose tied to sound or energy. Could these spaces be remnants of extraterrestrial technology designed for communication, energy production, or even interstellar signaling? The sealed doors in the pyramid's shafts, found by robots in 1993 and 2002, bear copper pins metals sacred to Egyptian gods, associated with divine power. Were these markers for a technology we can't comprehend, left by beings who knew their creations would outlast their visit? This brings us to the most provocative question: why the silence? The Egyptian authorities, through the Supreme Council of Antiquities, have consistently blocked exploration of Giza's hidden spaces. Radar anomalies beneath the Sphinx, robot discoveries in the pyramid, and historical reports of underground chambers are dismissed as nothing. This pattern of concealment, as we've seen, suggests a fear of what might be found. If Giza's monuments were built by extraterrestrials, or with their guidance, revealing this could upend our understanding of human history. It would mean we're not alone, that our greatest achievements might be borrowed from the stars. Institutions like UNESCO, which oversees archaeological sites, and global governments might fear the chaos of such a revelation, not just for science, but for religion, culture, and our sense of identity. The conspiracy deepens when we consider the broader pattern. Ancient texts across cultures hint at sky beings. The Hindu Vimanas, flying machines in the Mahabharata, describe aerial battles with advanced technology. The Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text, speaks of watchers who descended from the heavens, teaching humans forbidden knowledge. The Dogon people of Mali, with their detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, claim it came from amphibious beings from the stars. These stories, dismissed as myth, share a common thread: contact with advanced entities who shaped early civilizations. Giza's anomalies, its precision, its cosmic alignments, its silence fit this narrative, suggesting a connection to a cosmic intelligence that left its mark and then departed. But why leave such monuments? If extraterrestrials built or guided the construction of Giza, what was their purpose? The pyramid's resilience, surviving 4,500 years of earthquakes and invasions, suggests a design for geological time. Its mathematical code spy, phi, Earth's dimensions are universal, meant for any civilization advanced enough to measure them. Could it be a beacon, signaling to future visitors or to humanity when we're ready? The Sphinx, gazing at the equinox sunrise, might mark a cosmic rendezvous point, its water-worn stone a testament to its age. The underground chambers, sealed and silent, could house technology or records, waiting for a time when we're prepared to understand. The pattern of suppression-burned scrolls, locked tunnels, halted robot simplies that some, perhaps even modern powers, know more than they admit. The internal chambers, the King's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, the subterranean passages are constructed with granite and limestone fitted so tightly that no blade can slip between. The air shafts point to stars like Orion's belt. The ratios of its dimensions encode pi and phi, and its measurements mirror Earth's polar radius and equatorial circumference. We're told this was Khufu's tomb, built around 2580 BCE, but the absence of hieroglyphs, grave goods, or a mummy challenges that story. The pyramid's silence, its cosmic alignments, its enduring strength, they suggest a purpose far grander than a pharaoh's afterlife. What if the pyramid was never meant to honor the dead, but to safeguard knowledge for the living, for a future that might forget everything else? This idea transforms the pyramid from a monument into a machine note of gears or wires, but of geometry and endurance. Its design is too precise, too universal, to serve only one king or one era. The constants it encodes by, phi, the Earth's dimensions are timeless, independent of language, culture, or belief. Unlike papyrus scrolls or clay tablets, which crumble or become unreadable, stone endures. Unlike hieroglyphs, which require a Rosetta Stone to decipher, mathematics speaks to any civilization with the tools to measure. The pyramid's silence, its lack of inscriptions, is not an omission but a strategia, way to ensure its message survives the collapse of empires, the loss of languages, the forgetting of gods. It stands as a repository, a vault of knowledge meant to outlast catastrophe and guide a future world back to truths it might have lost. The pyramid's mathematical codes are the key to this purpose. Divide its perimeter, 921.6 meters, by its height, 146.6 meters, and you get 6.2857 within 0.1% of 2 pi. The slope, at 51.84 degrees, embeds the golden ratio, phi, a constant revered across cultures for its harmony. Multiply the height by 43,200, and you approximate the Earth's polar radius. Multiply the perimeter by the same factor, and you match the equatorial circumference. This 43,200 is no accident. It's tied to the precession of the equinoxes, a 25,920-year cycle in Earth's axial wobble, a phenomenon requiring centuries of observation to detect. These ratios are not the work of trial and error, but of deliberate calculation, a language of numbers that transcends time. Whoever built the pyramid knew that pi and phi would remain true, that the Earth's shape would endure, that the stars would shift but return. They built a structure to preserve these truths, not for Egypt, but for anyone who might come after. This concept of a knowledge repository finds echoes in other ancient sites. Stonehenge, built around 2500 BCE, aligns with the solstices, encoding astronomical cycles in its stones. The megaliths of Baalbek, Lebanon, some weighing 800 tons, suggest a purpose beyond mere architecture, their precision hinting at a lost science. Yonaguni's submerged structures off Japan, possibly 10,000 years old, feature terraces that defy natural erosion, as if built to withstand rising seas. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to 9,600 BCE, with its carved pillars aligned to stars, predates agriculture and writing, yet speaks of a sophistication we can't explain. These sites, like Giza, feel like anchors in time, built to survive disasters that erased their creators. The Great Pyramid, with its cosmic alignments and mathematical precision, could be the greatest of these, a time capsule designed for a world recovering from collapse. What kind of collapse? The African humid period, ending around 4000 BCE, transformed the Sahara from a green paradise to a desert, displacing populations to the Nile where Egypt would rise. Geological records show floods, climate shifts, and upheavals that could have destroyed entire civilizations. Plato's legend of Atlantis, a society swallowed by the sea 9,000 years before his time, might reflect such a catastrophe. If the pyramid's builders, whether Atlantean, extraterrestrial, or a lost human culture foresaw this, they might have constructed Giza as a safeguard, a way to preserve their knowledge through the chaos. The pyramid's resilience, surviving earthquakes, invasions, and 4,500 years proves it was built for geological time, not human reigns. Its Silencino hieroglyphs, no royal claim ensures its message is universal, meant for any civilization, in any era, that can measure its truths. The pyramid's acoustics, as we've explored, deepen this purpose. The king's chamber resonates at frequencies like 110 Hz, inducing calm or altered states, while the Osiris shaft below amplifies whispers in uncanny ways. These properties suggest a technology of sound, perhaps used to connect with cosmic forces or preserve knowledge through vibration. Could the pyramid be a machine for memory, its chambers tuned to frequencies that encode information in ways we don't yet understand? Nikola Tesla, who studied resonance and energy, believed ancient structures could harness Earth's natural forces. The pyramid's granite, rich in quartz, might act as a piezoelectric conductor, generating charges under vibration. This speculative idea aligns with the pyramid's design, its precision, its alignments, its silence suggesting a purpose beyond ritual, a technology meant to endure. This brings us to a haunting question. Why hide this knowledge? The pattern of concealment we've uncovered, sealed tunnels, halted robots, burned scrolls, suggests a deliberate effort to keep Giza's secrets buried. The Egyptian authorities, backed by institutions like UNESCO, restrict access to sensitive sites, dismissing radar anomalies and robot discoveries as nothing. If the pyramid is a repository for future generations, Why suppress its exploration? Perhaps the truth it holds about a lost civilization, advanced technology, or even extraterrestrial origins is too disruptive. It would challenge the narrative of Egypt as the cradle of Giza's wonders, suggesting the pharaohs were caretakers, not creators. It would force us to admit that human history is not a steady climb, but a cycle of rise and fall, with knowledge gained and lost across millennia. The conspiracy of silence extends beyond Egypt. In Mesoamerica, Maya codices were burned by conquistadors, erasing knowledge that might have rivaled European science. In Mesopotamia, texts hinting at pre-flood civilizations were dismissed as myths until sites like Göbekli Tepe proved otherwise. The Great Pyramid, with its universal codes, might be a safeguard against such losses, a monument built to outlast forgetting. Its builders, whether human or otherwise, chose stone over words, geometry over language, knowing that civilizations fade but numbers endure. The pyramid is a reset point, a beacon for a future that might need to rediscover Pi, Phi, or the Earth's place in the cosmos. A lesson carved for a world reborn from ruin. Welcome back, seekers of the eternal shadows, to the final chapter of Mystery History for Sleep. I'm Mr. H, your faithful guide through the veiled enigmas of time, where the sands of Giza cradle truths too profound for our waking minds to fully grasp. Over these nights, we've journeyed together across the Giza plateau, standing before the Sphinx with its water-worn scars that whisper of reigns long ceased, tracing the Great Pyramid's cosmic codes that encode the very secrets of the universe. We've questioned its silent chambers, empty of a pharaoh's remains, and uncovered stelae that paint Khufu and Thutmose IV not as builders, but as humble restorers of something far older. We've descended into the hidden tunnels beneath Giza, followed robots to sealed doors that guard unspoken mysteries, and mourned a Coptic scroll lost to flames before its words could rewrite our past. We've unraveled a conspiracy of silence woven by those in power, explored the legend of Atlantis as a possible cradle for these wonders, and even dared to consider extraterrestrial hands shaping the stones. We've listened to the pyramid's resonant hum, a symphony of ancient physics that hints at technologies beyond our comprehension. Now, as the desert night deepens and the stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, we arrive at the conclusion a moment to weave these threads into a tapestry that reveals the true shape of Giza's enigma. It's not a shape of kings or gods, not a monument to glory or death. It's the shape that memory forgot, a form carved in stone to defy forgetting itself, a repository designed not for the past but for the future. The Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, the entire plateau they stand as a silent archive, a vault of knowledge built to endure the collapse of worlds, waiting for a time when humanity might need to remember what it has lost. Close your eyes, let the gentle rhythm of my voice carry you, and allow this final tale to unfold like the horizon at dawn, revealing the light in the darkness. From the beginning, the clues have pointed to a truth that transcends Egypt's pharaohs. The Sphinx, with its erosion patterns carved by rains that fell 7,000 years ago, predates the arid desert we know, suggesting a builder from a greener, forgotten era. The Great Pyramid, its base aligned to true north with impossible precision, encodes Pi and Phi in its dimensions, mirroring Earth's curvature and the precession of the equinox Giza, knowledge that should have required telescopes and calculus, tools absent from ancient Egypt's arsenal. The empty king's chamber, resonant with frequencies that alter perception, feels less like a tomb and more like a chamber tuned to cosmic harmonies. The Stelethi inventory and the dream speak of restoration, not creation, as if Khufu and Thutmose IV stumbled upon sacred sites they could honor but not claim. The underground network, with its precise chambers and uncanny acoustics, hints at an infrastructure for a purpose we can't name, while sealed doors discovered by robots remain unopened, their copper pins glinting like warnings from another time. These elements, woven together, form a narrative not of Egyptian triumph but of inheritance, a legacy from a lost civilization that knew its end was near. Whether Atlantis, as Plato described, sinking beneath waves in a cataclysm of floods and quakes, or another advanced society erased by the Sahara's transformation, The builders of Giza seem to have foreseen oblivion. They didn't inscribe their names or stories in hieroglyphs, knowing languages fade and cultures crumble. Instead, they encoded their wisdom in the universal tongue of mathematics and geometry, carving constants like pi and phi into stone that would outlast empires. The pyramid's silence is its strength, a message meant for any future, any people who might measure its slopes and rediscover the Earth's shape, the stars' cycles, the ratios that bind the cosmos. Imagine a world on the brink of collapse, rains failing, seas rising, societies fracturing under the weight of change. The builders, masters of astronomy and engineering, construct a monument to survive the storm, not to glorify themselves, but to anchor knowledge for those who come after. They align it to the stars, knowing Orion's belt would return in its cycle, a celestial clock ticking through millennia. They tune its chambers to resonate, perhaps to preserve information in vibrations, or to guide future seekers through altered states of awareness. The Sphinx, half lion, half god, gazes at the equinox sunrise, marking the renewal of time. Its water scars a record of the deluge that nearly claimed their world. This is no tomb for a king, but a library for humanity, a repository where the shape of memory endures, even when memory itself is forgotten. The conspiracy of concealment we've uncovered makes sense in this light. The Egyptian authorities, academics, and global institutions guard Giza not just for tourism or preservation, but because its truth threatens our fragile sense of progress. If the pyramid is a time capsule from a lost civilization, it admits that advanced knowledge has risen and fallen before, that our own world might not be the pinnacle but a fleeting chapter. The burned Coptic scroll, describing beacons of stone before language, was silenced to prevent this revelation. The sealed doors, the dismissed radar scans, the halted explorations, they all protect a narrative that keeps us blind to our cyclical past. Even the bold hypothesis of extraterrestrial involvement fits here. If beings from the stars built or guided Giza, the pyramid becomes a cosmic repository, a message from beyond, waiting for us to evolve enough to understand it. But the pyramid's true power lies in its patience. It doesn't demand belief or worship. It simply stands, its stones weathering time, its codes waiting to be measured anew. For a future civilization, emerging from ruins, perhaps after our own collapse site, offers a blueprint, the ratio of pi to rebuild circles, phi for harmony in design, Earth's dimensions to map the planet. The alignments to Orion remind them of the stars' eternal dance. The resonant chambers teach them to listen to the universe's hum. This is the shape that memory forgot to form, so enduring, it outlives forgetting. A monument built not to remember the past, but to ensure the future remembers how to begin again. As we conclude this journey, let the weight of Giza's enigma settle upon you like the desert night. The Great Pyramid and Sphinx are more than stones, they're a question, a challenge, a gift. They ask us to look beyond the stories we've been told, to question the silence, to measure the truths hidden in plain sight. Whether built by a lost human civilization, guided by extraterrestrials, or born of Atlantis's final breath, Giza stands as a repository for what matters most. The knowledge that binds us to the cosmos, the constants that remain when all else fades. In this shape, memory endures, forgotten yet unforgotten, waiting with the patience of stone for the day we're ready to remember.